What's up, folks? Welcome back to the Peripheral Reviews podcast. We are back on the airwaves for a new episode. Thanks again for joining us. We have been off for a bit. We've taken a little bit of a hiatus. Glad to be back. Glad to be doing a little bit of content tonight. I am your host, Jake. Errol is my co-host tonight. What's going on, Errol? How we doing?
Oh, pretty good. Pretty good. Glad to be back.
Likewise. We've got a lot to get into. Big episode today. We are doing another film. We're going to dive back into the film series. This one's going to be our fourth. We've got a few updates on the podcast we'll get to in just a moment. But today I just want to announce what we're going to be talking about. Today we're talking about Martin Scorsese's theological journey, Silence from 2016, just a monster film with so much to talk about. Really pumped to unpack this thing. But first and foremost, let's get to a little bit of housekeeping. We got a few updates on the podcast, a few things important to announce or update you listeners on. Number one, and first and foremost, we are on Twitter or X, whichever you're referring to it as, at Peripheral V123, as per usual. Also, still the status quo. We are on soundcloud.com/peripheral views 123. That's still where to find the streaming of each episode, if that suits you. We've also just announced, or I'm announcing now, we've just launched a YouTube channel. So we are on YouTube. I know a lot of folks probably do the podcast thing on YouTube when they're just hanging out, doing some house chores, whatever suits you. But we are on there now. And if you're looking for our channel, we have our own YouTube channel now. It's basically just throw us in your search bar on YouTube. Peripheral Views Podcast should come right up. And everything except our Lupe Fiasco episode, two-part episode, is on there. So that will bring you all the way to our 9th episode on it's a kind of a short episode on the special preview of Oppenheimer. That's in there. And everything before that is on there. I'm going to work on trying to get those Lupe Fiasco episodes, the cool episodes, up on there as soon as possible on our YouTube channel. Also, same spots, you know where we're at. If you've been listening to us along the way, if you're a new listener, we are on Apple Podcasts and Spotify for all your streaming pleasures. If you happen to catch us on there, please subscribe, rate, and review. 5-star reviews would be much appreciated. Any traffic you give us on those platforms is super appreciated, and any feedback you can provide us with, we once again very appreciate it. We also finalized to some degree. We finalized our web page, so we do have a website up. All the episodes are on there. If you're looking to stream our episodes anywhere else, that's a good spot to catch us. We're gonna have updates on there. The website's up and launched. There's still some work to be done on it in terms of each page, but each episode is on the website. We have a rating section on there where every time we do a rating on a film or a album, I'm going to update that along the way just to make sure that we'll have it. It's not really like it's more chronological than it is like in order of ranking. So, but the webpage is up, peripheralviewspodcast.com. Check us out on there, and please leave us any feedback. There's a mailing list available as we get going. That will probably start to be a regular thing for anybody joining who wants to be updated on the podcast. That's about it. Errol, you ready to dive in? What do you think?
Oh yeah. No, I can't. That's all we've been doing in the like month off or so. So
Yeah, just building out, working on getting things rolling. We've got I've got a little bit of recording equipment up, so hopefully I sound a little better on the mic. Errol's has sounded pretty good so far, so not too much to upgrade there. But today we're talking about a big film from 2016. So, Errol, what do you say we dive into the year 2016 film? We'll get this thing rolling right off the bat. What do you say?
oh yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, 2016, big year for film. Actually, Errol, I noticed as we were as I was poking through the list of films that were released that year, I actually noticed that like you and I saw a couple of these together. Interestingly enough,
Yeah.
I've got for the big films of that year, I've got on a list, and you can contribute and throw a couple my way as well. The big ones were for me. Arrival came out that year, which we saw that together, didn't we, Errol?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was a good one. I never saw Manchester by the Sea, but that was pretty well critically acclaimed. Didn't see it, unfortunately. Let's see what else came out. Hacksaw Ridge was excellent. Loved that movie. Hell or High Water came out that year. Big film. That was a good old like kind of throwback western. Moonlight, which won Best Picture, that's an excellent film. La La Land was very critically acclaimed. Deadpool, the Jungle Book remake came out. The Coens brothers with Hail Caesar, and Rogue Star. Obviously, Star Wars Rogue One was like the film of the year in a lot of ways
Yeah,
in terms of
that
box
was
office.
that was kind of my film of the year personally. Being a Star Wars nerd, it was honestly, I don't want to say like the high water mark for me, but it's kind of everything I've like wanted in like the Star Wars universe, just like a gritty telling of something or like a not retelling of something. And so the best thing about Rogue One, like a spoiler warning, is apparently in the first run through, everyone was supposed to survive. Like, it's just gonna be like a feel good, like, oh, we did it, we got the plans for the Death Star off, and then like just some random person, like some random guy who I'm just totally like butchering it, but like just some dude who did like a like sound design or something. He was like, I have a better idea. He's like, what
Oh,
if everyone dies? And they're like,
he adjusted the writing on the spot.
yeah, and then they're like, all right, everyone reshoot. We got like
This idea
we
is too
gotta
good to
bring it
pass.
back. Yep, everyone's gonna die.
Oh,
So
that's shocking. I didn't know that. You know what the thing
right.
about the Star Wars like universe is that so I've seen the obviously the first three films. I've seen many times. I saw like A New Hope and Return of the Jedi, Empire Strikes Back. Those three films I like grew up on, saw them a bunch when I was a kid, loved them, still love them today. I haven't really seen them in quite a while. And then there was obviously the secondary trilogy that was like critically kind of lauded or not lauded, but panned, I guess is the right word. It wasn't I don't really know because I haven't seen them. I know that they weren't particularly received well by not only just the critical community, but like you know the fans weren't huge fans of it. I know that when they first came out, they were a big deal, but
People were
people are
pissed about Jar
pissed.
Jar
Yeah,
Binks.
Jar Jar Binks I've heard is like the problem there, but or one of the big problems there. But I've never really I'm not a huge and the new universe, the new trilogy. It's a trilogy, right? They've done a new trilogy. Is it completed?
Yeah.
Yeah, I see. I have not. It's a shame because like once we've talked about this before, but like the big blockbuster like Star Wars doesn't count as superhero, but it kind of falls somewhere in the vicinity of superhero genre.
It's technically a spaghetti western.
Yeah, it's in the plot construction, of course, right? The way Lucas like wrote it is very much in that vein. There's like a lot of that going on in the background. I've heard.
Hmm.
But like the new ones, I've heard have really kind of stepped up the game, and I'm like kind of anxious. I'm kind of waiting for my kids to get a little older and see if we can do like a run through of the whole series.
So I will give the um like a like the recent stuff, like the Ray trilogy and stuff like that. Like I'll give that an honest review. I think that is very good to be geared towards children. I
Perfect.
think
Yeah.
there's not a lot of stuff in there. There like the stakes aren't like crazy high. Like there's some things, but like there's never like imminent peril. Like it's not like scary. But like the thing is, that's how the original Star Wars like were geared like in the 80s. Like you know, it's got some like adult themes. It's got like, people dying and stuff, but it's a fantasy thing for children. Um and
You
I
can't
think
trust anything from like the 80s or the 70s. I mean, bro, like Jaws is rated PG. Bro,
right.
the fucking
Right.
shark eats Robert Shaw in half. Like he literally like I remember seeing Jaws like I usually watch that around the 4th of July every year. We didn't watch it this year, but I remember the last time we did it, which probably would have been last summer. I remember watching that and I'm like I know that this is PG and like this is whatever, PG means a lot of different things now than it did back then, and like that's kind of just the only rating they had to work with between like, okay,
Well,
this
they
is
meant like when
not
they
quite
meant
R, but it's not for
when it
kids
said
either.
parental guidance suggested, they're like, you better have your parents here
They
because you're gonna
should
see some
this
shit.
PG is like underscored, like put an underline under both under the guidance part because like Robert Shaw literally like you see him like you almost see like his like body react to the puncturing of like in of vital organs. Like the shark like sinks its teeth down and then takes that extra chomp and like pops something in his innards and like a bunch of blood comes pouring out of his mouth. I'm just like, how the heck? Plus there's like boobs at the beginning. I mean,
The
loved it as a
the
kid, not bad.
the director of that movie said if he knew the impact that that movie had on like sharks in general, he would have never made it.
Spielberg
Um,
said that?
yes,
Really? Interesting.
because what happened was after that movie came out, people started hunting sharks.
Oh yeah, that could be a problem. And
They're like,
also people
oh,
were well, it's like you got double. You got people hunting sharks, and then like I guess when that movie first came out, like people there was like a receding of people from like holiday beaching. Like people were
right.
just not fucking with the beach for a couple of
He
years.
said he said he wouldn't have done it because the thing is sharks don't hold grudges. So
That's
he was mad that like there was a like a statistical uptick in like shark fishing.
yeah, probably I mean, the film had this Jaws has just such a crazy. I
No,
mean,
but that
Jaws and Star Wars are like two of the. Speaking of Star Wars, just circling it back, I mean, two
right,
of the most like culturally impactful films. By the way,
it,
Spielberg and Lucas, like
right.
those are the
It's
guys.
them.
Yeah,
It's
that's
just
just what
those
they do.
guys.
Yeah. So that
But
was what
that's the
was
thing though.
if you could pick like I guess if you just to circle it back to our content here, like if you could pick one film from that year to rewatch, like okay, let's do the Desert Island exercise. You only get one film from each year to watch for the rest of your life. You got to pick one from 2016. What's your film?
Dang, because off the top of my head, I just do want to pick Rogue One. Um, but then there's a part of me that really does like Deadpool, like it is like really funny.
Deadpool's fun, man. Deadpool was a really good time. That was a fun film, and it was like very unique and R-rated, and I think it was the first R-rated superhero movie in a
But
long.
that's also when haven't even talked about it when Captain America: Civil War came out.
That's the one you and I saw. That is the one that you took me to because I had not seen any Captain America films, and that was
And then you're like, oh, I'm not going to be able to watch it because like we're just going to jump in midway. And I was like, oh, it
I
doesn't
did it
matter. It's the
anyway,
first
and
one
that
to it.
oh, it was so worth it. It was so much fun. It was great.
I was like, because it was the first. I was like, no, it's just the standalone. It's his like introduction,
Yeah, it was great.
kind of.
No,
Well,
I
like
really liked it.
that was kind of a lie too because he had something before. But I'm like, nah, I was like, it'll be fine.
Well, to be completely frank, if I had to flip the exercise on myself, I actually think the answer truly is silence. Which spoiler, that's a bit of a spoiler. I actually really fucking liked Arrival. I remember you and I seeing that in the theaters and thinking this is great, but I don't know that I love it. I think I just like it.
So
And then I saw it
that's
again and I was like, there's more to this film than I realized the first go around.
so I didn't want to be like that critical, but I was not in love with it when I watched it initially.
Arrival.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was like, it's nice. It has like a meaning, I guess, that like, we should probably like put everything aside and start like striving towards something greater. Also, Split came out that year.
Split was dope. I never saw it
I
when it
didn't,
came out, but
I didn't watch it at all, but I've heard, uh, just
it's
raving
good.
reviews
It was
because,
cool because it was like, oh shit, M. Night Shyamalan's back. Like, because he had obviously made some real clunkers for like about 10 years. He had not made anything worthwhile. Like, The Village was kind of the last one that was, and even that was like kind of split reviews. Some people loved it, some people hated it. But after The Village came out in '04, it was like, where's this guy going? This guy was like the
right.
filmmaker of a lifetime. He was like our new Spielberg for a couple of years there. And then The Village came out, and people were like, okay, it's all right to have, you're not going to hit them all. And then after that, you get like Lady in the Water was horrific. The Last Airbender was terrible. Actually, The Last Airbender.
Dude,
I
most
say it's
like
terrible. I
ill
never saw it, but it's considered one of the worst films ever made.
No, it's considered so bad that the last Airbender like community, like the people who like Avatar,
That's what I've heard. They hated it.
they don't talk about it. Like
Yeah,
it's
they
like
don't even
the
consider
the
it part of the
meme
universe, right?
the meme is like someone be like, oh, like the M. Night Shyamalan movie, and they'll be like the what?
Yeah, I
They'll
don't know
be
what
like, oh,
you're
what is
talking
the
about.
Avatar movie? What are you talking about? They're just it doesn't exist.
They just completely reject it. It's like Christianity in the Far East.
Right. But I think like one thing I want to leave off of like the only thing I'd like to say about Split is I always think like movies kind of like that are unfair because you got James McAvey or McAvoy and
Oh,
he's
McAvoy.
yeah, he's got to act 17 different parts.
He's good too. He's very good in it. Very good.
Right. But he could act 17 and like, get an award, don't get award, it doesn't matter because you got other people like just playing like one part like for
Well,
like
it was cool because it's an offshoot of the
oh
Unbreakable.
shit, that's also when Jason Bourne came out.
Oh yeah. Well, oh Jason Bourne, right? Not the Bourne Identity. It was like the first one outside of
Yeah,
the. That's true. To be honest with you, you know what's of this list? Okay, so like Moonlight, obviously won Best Picture, great film, like groundbreaking, tells a very important story, and like a little bit politically, like socially and politically charged. Not really political is the wrong word. It's like it's more of a social film. It's did you see Moonlight before I even talk about it at
no.
all? Yeah, I mean it's basically just about like it's like homosexual repression in like African American communities or minority communities. Like that's kind of like the theme of the film in a lot. I've only seen it once and I was like very moved by it. Like powerhouse performances, everybody's really good in it. If and in my opinion, it's actually in hindsight, like I actually don't know that. I think that the message of the film is way more important than how good the film is, and the film is very good, but I don't know that it's like it's more so just like the willingness to take on such a like a heavy topic was
Mm-hmm.
what was like in my opinion most impressive about it. Not so much that the film worked because like if I remember correctly, and I don't want to give a critical analysis of the film having only seen it, a handful of years ago, but like um I did remember having a few problems with like the way that the film was constructed and um, just kind of it bounces around from like I think three different time periods, which worked mostly, but I think I had a few issues with it. But either way, like the what the film was trying to accomplish was like really important, and I thought it was good that the film won Best Picture. I thought that was like I was really pumped to see that like because I think that was the year, in fact, that like the Academy Awards like I think they were like that was the fucking slip up where like the person who I can't remember who it was. It's kind of a famous moment in the Academy Awards history where like the
Where they
presenter
read the wrong one.
they read the wrong one. They were like La La Land, and then they were like, "Oh shit, no, it's Moonlight, guys. Go sit down. It's actually Moonlight." And then everybody was all already on the stage. Like, oh shit, man, what the fuck? What are we doing here? Which is such
Dang.
a fuck up. I mean, it's such a bad fuck up, especially on like I mean, at one point, not at this point, but at one point, the Academy Awards were like one of the most viewed television events of the year. Luckily, not at this point, but I bet you people were watching that. That was like the
That's got to
little
be a
sniff
good
flag.
consolation prize though. Better than just not having your name read.
Yeah, because how many people were just like, "Well, La La Land must have been good," and then watched it. Maybe I didn't see La La Land though, but
No, I didn't either.
all right, let's shift a little bit forward here. We don't want to get hung up too much into 2016. What do you give me your take though? What do you think? 2016 was it a good year for film? A great year for
I think it
film?
was a great year for
Great
film.
year. You're going that deep. I
I
would
think it was
disagree.
great just because I am a sucker for superhero stuff, and then there
Out
was
of
some
that,
other really good stuff sprinkled in there.
yeah. If I
Um,
could make one recommendation to listeners though, of all the films that I felt like I don't think it was the best film, but I thought like, well, I'll say two of them that I don't think were the best films of that pick or of that that group of films that were like, in the top whatever, the top 10. The two films that like I was just like, holy shit, these are really like solid B plus movies was Hell or High Water was like this excellent modern western. That was really fucking good. I mean, really good, like a solid B plus film. And then Hacksaw Ridge, which we're going to talk about Andrew Garfield, obviously for this for Silence, but Hacksaw Ridge was just unbelievably good. That was directed by Mel Gibson, and I think it was I think it was the first film he had done since like Apocalypto or some shit. It had been a hot
Ooh.
minute since he had done anything, and it was unbelievable. Like
Isn't
Garfield,
the same
it's the same guy,
protagonist?
yeah, and that was the one he plays like a medic in World War II, I believe, and like, but he's like once again like a Catholic. I think he's like he's a Catholic from like the woods in Virginia, and
They
he won't pick up a
he
firearm.
he's doing he's doing the acting for Silence. You're like, hey, do you want to play a Catholic? And he's like, yes. He's just like, I can do it,
Done
100%.
this.
I
I've done
got
the
you,
B-rated war
no
version.
question. He's like, I got it from here. He's like,
Yeah.
that's all I need. I'm a
It's
Christian.
really good. It's super violent. It's super violent for a film where like the protagonist refuses to like pick up a firearm and kill. Like it still manages to be super violent and it's very triumphant and it's just great. So, those are a couple of my like picks. Errol, you dropped your picks. You say it's a great year for film. I say it was a good slash very good. I think there were some misses in there that there wasn't like the one film. You know how every year has like the one film. There's like the big one that's just like
Oh,
holy shit.
okay. That's a good,
You know what I mean?
because
Like
they're
there's a lot
really
of good, but not anything any great.
that's I would say that it was great because there's a lot of good, but like yeah, there wasn't any. I mean, you could argue Deadpool was
Yeah, I
like
mean,
a
very cultural
rebreathing into like the superhero genre, but I think that Silence is the most important like religious movie
by far.
that I've ever seen.
It could be. It could be. It might. It's in the conversation. We'll get into that, and it is. I think that is, in my opinion, it is the best film of that year. Which is amazing in a few ways that we'll get into. But like, in my opinion, for a year that had a lot of good films, like a good collection of very good to good films, I just thought the year was missing that one that was like, man, this is an all time great. Rough year in that regard, just missing that one that over the top. This is one of the greatest films of all time because as we'll talk, I actually think Silence could be considered that, but it wasn't at the time, and I think it's going to take some time for it to get there. So, but we'll get into those details. I want to talk about films that I've been viewing and anything Errol's seen in the time that we've been out. So let's shift into that really quick. Here's the list of films that I've seen as of since we've been out. I've only gotten to see a handful, and some of them are reviewings. But here's my list. I've got my wife and I watched Blue Velvet, David Lynch film from the 80s. Have you seen Blue Velvet? Let me know if you've seen these, Errol, as we move through.
No.
No on Blue Velvet. Very strange film. It was very strange. I know it's important. I know it's like groundbreaking, and I did not think it was good. That's just that's an unpopular opinion probably in the world of film, but I did not think it was good. I thought it was it had its moments. It left a stain on my mind. I'll say that. Like I was like, it was trapped up here in my mind for many days afterwards, but very strange, very bizarre. Felt very dreamlike, which I think was the point. But I don't think it really was. I didn't enjoy watching it at all. Following up with that, we watched Boyhood. Did you see that, Errol?
No.
No on Boyhood. Boyhood was fucking incredible. I mean, truly fantastic. And I had a couple of issues with the ending of the film, the last segment of the film, but Boyhood, Errol, was a 2014 movie that like where the main characters in the film basically like the film had been filmed by Richard Linklater across like 10 years.
The guy's life.
Yeah, so like everybody in the film ages accurately. Like they've truly like you watch them age. Dude, I'm telling you, it's one of the most beautiful coming of age films I've ever seen. It's one of my all time favorite movies. I would put it.
Coming of age.
I mean, literally, like everyone is so good in it.
Right.
It speaks to these like weird nuances of American life that I've never seen a film be so honest about. And like,
Well, it's almost like you can't do that unless you film it over time.
but he was so prophetic. Like it's so strange. Like I think he had to use a lot of excess. Like he knew what things were going to like age out. and then like zeroed in on them, like, you know, iPod shuffles, and like he starts off with like Game Boy Color and stuff like maybe those are even like trite examples, but he just knew what things were gonna. And obviously, this is all part of the editing. I'm sure he has like a freaking mountain of film that he had to sift through across, you know, 15 years, or how, I think it was like 12 or 13 years. But man, this thing worked. It really, really, really worked. Ethan Hawke's in it. He's fantastic. The child actors. There's a little bit of. It's one of those films where, and we could do a critical analysis about it another time, but we don't have to do that. We don't have to spend too much time on it. But like, it's one of those films where like you kind of don't need the best of acting. The child actors do a pretty good job throughout the film, but there's definitely some weaknesses there in terms of acting, and you can't blame them. I mean, it's not a guarantee that they're all going to be great actors, but you don't even care. That's how good the film is. You just don't even care because it's so impressive what he's doing, like the construction of the film and the way that it's. Um,
Like there's a bigger message.
yeah, it's just no, it's a time capsule. It's like and by the way, like he just so happens that the protagonist of the film, the boy in the film, happens to be our age, so it like really resonates. You would love it. You would really love it. It's a beautiful film. I mean, and I mean that in the most like beautifully artistic way. Like it really is a beautifully like artistic, intelligent time capsule of what it was like to be to grow up in this era in the early 2000s. It's powerful shit. I mean, I would say it's probably, if you force me to sit down and write my top 100 films, it's 100% somewhere. Great.
Hmm.
Yeah. So give it, listeners, if you haven't, I know it was a phenomenon when it came out, but it really kind of cooled off over time. Give it a look see. Rewatch Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That's always like fucking terrible and
Dude,
awful.
I've been playing the video game, man.
How is the game? I've heard the game's like pretty
It's
popular.
I mean, it's I don't want to say it's like a ripoff of like Dead by Daylight, but it's kind of the same like ilk. Um, I don't like playing the Survivor, man. I don't. I'll play like the I'll play Bubba. I'll play
Is it
Chainsaw
like true to
Boy
the
or any of
film, or
those.
is it like a separate
Kinda,
plot?
yeah. It's
Oh,
almost like,
geez.
dude. It's almost like so you're in the house. You either start off as one of the three people in the house, which is Bubba, and then like two other people. You can be like Sissy or um, Johnny, a couple other people, the hitchhiker, and then you choose between like
Can I be
four of the
Franklin? I'm gonna
survivors.
be Franklin, where I just sit in my wheelchair and I just bitch at everybody the whole
Well, so
time.
Frank, no, Franklin's a character,
He
and
is a character in it. Oh, okay.
yeah, but like what you have to do is you have to feed him blood, and then the more blood you feed him, the stronger he gets,
Oh, he
and
gets
then
up
like
off the
he
chair.
no, he just gives you perks. Like he'll be able to like he has like a echolocation like where he'll like yell, and then if the survivors are like moving around, like it'll show up on the map.
You know what? I thought that when I saw that that was coming out as a video game, I was like, oh, okay, I see what's going on here. They the opening scene of Resident Evil 4 must have like inspired this because like of how like intense the chainsaw scene. If you played 4, Resident Evil 4?
Seen it.
Yeah, it's like basically you're in the village and like they're like once you get to the village, all of a sudden this dude's chasing you with a chainsaw and it's a very Texas chainsaw. And like you kind of got to ambush him a little bit and like hunker down in like a little cabin and you got to fuck him up in the cabin. I mean, that's basically the moral of that. But like that was such a like a groundbreaking video game sequence that I always felt when I heard that this was coming out, I was like, oh, they must be trying to recreate the magic of that. Sounds like not really. Sounds like they're trying to pay homage to the film.
Yeah, no, so it's almost like the map is like accurate to the film itself, like or at least like the couple maps they have, and
Cool.
but it's pretty niche. A lot of people who play those games like really like them. So if you play like early level, you'll have like a little bit of fun. But like the second you get to like level 20 or so, like it starts getting pretty sweaty.
Okay, well, folks, check that out. Check out the film too, 1974 horror classic. It's going to be about that time of year where people are going to be wanting to watch the horror films. And that one's a tough. It's a tough hang. That one's tough. It's not that it's a bad film. It's obviously not. It's like very, impactful on the world of cinema, but it's it's not a fun watch. That much is true. Dead Poet Society was my other one. That was the next one. I'll try to move through these a little quickly, a little more quickly than before. Have you seen that one, Daryl? Dead Poet Society?
No, but I've heard of it.
Yeah, it's solid. It's just solid all the way through. It's really good. Robin Williams with a great performance in that. It's great great stuff on that front. A lot of good performances. Also, Ethan Hawke is in there. Alien. Watched the original Alien. Hadn't seen that since I was a kid. That one's fucking Jesus, man. Have you seen that? Have you seen the original Alien? Is that
Yeah.
on your docket? That one's fucking like intense. A little slow in parts for sure. A little long. Probably could have cut out a little. I don't know, a little segment here, a little segment there. Maybe chop it down by 15 minutes or so. But like, who am I to judge Ridley Scott on like a fucking absolute classic? It's just
I
like
think they didn't cut it out
tension build.
because well, like that exactly, and like the world that they had like going on, like you
Yeah.
almost like don't want to leave from that.
Well, you know how many films are actually like in that universe? Is like Prometheus is of the same is like an extension on this universe. They cross platformed with freaking Predator. Um, like there's just the sequels are just endless. They just keep coming.
It is now that you mention it, it is a huge franchise.
It's a massive franchise, and the original film is it is a classic, and it is fucking scary. They're like genuinely scary. Like it's a truly scary horror film and sci-fi horror film. I couldn't help but notice I when I was watching it though, I could not help but like feel a little bit. I was like, God damn, there's a lot of the thing in here. There's a lot of the thing in here, and
You know
it
what?
was. I think at the end of the day, though, I was like, the thing was truly an independent film. It wasn't the same. It wasn't the same film in any important way. I just saw a lot of influence.
You know what I realized way too late about the thing, and I kind of like now that you just brought it up.
What's that?
Um, it's just like a representation of a manipulative person.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, right? Yeah.
So,
Okay, I
so
can buy
just
into this. Keep going.
the thing is a super like all right, like a metaphor for a super manipulative person. Like all right, you got a person who act like there's something else, right? Like the
Right.
whole time they have this facade. Everyone believes it. They're good. Everyone thinks they're good. The second they get figured out, absolute chaos. They just start snapping. Like the whole once the facade's up, it's totally
You're
every
on the
all
money.
gloves are off.
Yeah, you're
So
on the
like
money. You're on the money.
I'm like, it's not even a monster. It's just people we deal with. Like, I was like, I'm like, whoever wrote the thing, I was like, that's just that guy's mother or some shit. You know, like, that's
Right.
just a fucking,
It's
it's
like
just someone the second they call him out, they're like, no, you're not the person you say you are. You're acting different. They're like, you son of a bitch.
it's like this fucking movie is Freudian as fuck, and nobody even
Right.
knew it. Yeah, no, I could see that.
Like, they're just talking about their relationships with toxic people in their life. Like, and the thing is, like, they are the true monsters. Like,
It's the
people
dark
who,
side, right? It's like the
right.
dark side of human nature. Like there's
Right, and it's almost like it is alien, like it
yeah,
is
yeah.
a whole different entity. But like, yeah, it's the thing
That's a
because
great double feature right there. Like not to bring it back to like my you know what I mean. It's like I'm
yeah,
not trying to pull you off of the like psychological theorizing you're doing, but like it is a great double feature. Like because both those movies kind of hit that note in different ways. And but they really are like it's almost like you watch Alien, the tension builds, tension builds, tension builds, and then you just turn Alien off, and instead of going into Aliens, which a lot of people would do, I would shift right to the Thing, and you just get like the fast forward, like action packed version, a little more violent version of Alien, just like shifted into the Antarctic instead of space. And
well, so the thing is just the the thing is just like like the psychological version of
turmoil, right? It's
Alien.
like
Like
yeah,
it's
exactly.
if you take a Alien and then you just add like psychological horror to it, then you got the Thing.
Yeah, it was almost like because the settings were the difference because they were in space. They had to like consider every little thing they did, so there was a lot more deliberation about things. And
Well, that
in
and
all
like the
fairness, like Alien truly is a better film, but I personally would so much rather watch The Thing. I had so much more fun with The Thing. Alien is very obviously better written. It's smarter in a lot of
Had
ways.
more money into it.
Yeah, and right, because it looks like 2001 meets a horror film. Like, you know what I mean? Because like you're in the spaceship looks authentic. Everybody is very convincing. Like you have a fucking class act of actors in the film. Like you got this like wonderful ensemble with like everybody putting out. Like John Hurt is like an amazing. He's one of the greatest, and um, it's just a little different than the thing. Whereas like you get the thing and it's like this is fucking John Carpenter and Kurt Russell and Keith David and a bunch of other like kind of B rated actors who are putting on good performances, but they're having way more fun and it's way more violent and like I don't know. For me, it's just always going to be the thing. And like I was looking at our ratings and I noticed that I gave the thing a 9 out of 10. I think we both gave it a 9 out of 10. And actually, no, you gave it an 8 out of 10, and I gave it a 9 out of 10. I kind of want to go back and just give it full marks, um, just because of how much I love it. I that movie, I truly love that movie. But we'll circle back to making re-ratings down the road. Maybe when we revisit it.
So I was actually thinking of re-ratings because I've been going kind of high for stuff, and I think it's disingenuous to rate
You're
it.
gonna taper back a little bit,
I might
not be
have
so
to
generous.
because almost everything's been like a 10. But that so also caveat, that's kind of how I feel. Like all the stuff we've been talking about has been stuff that I truly do like
I
thoroughly
know.
enjoy. That's why it's been at like the head of the chopping block.
That's
Uh
actually true. I just think we have to. I don't think we have to change our ratings. I think we just have to start talking about stuff that's not so fucking good. But like at first, this is
right.
what we want to talk about is the stuff that's why Death of Stalin was fun to jump in there because it's not like a perfect film, but it's a lot of fun to talk about, and it's also like it's a B movie. It's a B movie, and we're gonna talk about some like I want to like let's talk about The Room or some shit like something like really bad but like
Right.
enjoyable to talk about. But let me finish up with what I watched, and then we'll shift into the film before we deliberate too long on this stuff. I rewatched Deliverance, which is always that's a talk about tough hangs. Holy shit! Like, good lord. Have you seen Deliverance? Has that one been on your? That's something you've gotten the chance to. I say unfortunate. It's a great film, but it's very tough to watch. Have you seen it?
I don't think so.
No, that one's tough. There's some tough scenes in that one. I'll let the listeners do their research on that one, but great film, very tough to watch. Um, when Harry Met Sally, it's so strange to go from Deliverance to When Harry Met Sally, but I did that. That was a shift. And that was so much fun. Great film, great rom com, probably one of the best rom coms ever made, easily, and some like iconic romantic slash comedy scenes in that. Billy Crystal killing it with Meg Ryan. Great film. And we those are the ones I watched just in the month that we've been out. They're all classics. They're all a little bit older, nothing too modern, other than Boyhood. But great films through and through. Errol, what have you seen in the past month? Have you gotten any spare time to watch any movies? Did I lose you?
Oh yeah, no, sorry. It was a I was muted. I'm totally sorry about that.
No, you're good. You're good. I just want to see if you'd watched it. Have you seen anything in the last month? Any films other than Silence?
No, not a lot of movies. The high watermark of me watching anything was probably honestly UFC 293.
Ooh, shit, bro. Yeah, we could chat about that for just a minute or two. Yeah, our boy Israel Adesanya had he took a decision loss to Sean Strickland, one of the
Man,
biggest
that
upsets
he
ever.
he didn't show up at all.
No, no, he didn't. It was a tough performance for him, honestly. And I hate to be the guy to say this, but I just don't think he showed up. And I think that on his best night, he probably still beats Strickland. I know Strickland had a great game
I
plan.
did see that's the thing. I think that that's the case, and I think Israel Adesanya thinks that that's the case too.
Yeah.
Um,
I think they just didn't have an answer for it. And I've heard interviews with Coach Eric Nixick, who is the coach for Strickland, and he basically said like,
is he said that he called out everything?
yeah, he said, yeah,
Yeah,
the coaching was just that good. Like, and
yeah. He said
Strickland was responded.
he said you saved his life, and then he's like, "What do you mean?"
Setting up
And
that left high kick, that left
he's
hand
like,
kick.
every time I went to set something up, you said something about it.
Yeah, there was like a 1-2 parrying that was there was like this feint that Izzy was trying to set up the left head kick, the left high head kick, And he every time that he would set up the two feints for it, Nixick would call it out, and Strickland wouldn't respond to the feints, and so like just couldn't get because
And that's
what it
so
basically is, those feints were there to get Strickland to drop his hands so that Izzy could come up top with the head kick for a knockout, and Strickland just never bid on it. And
dude, and that's
to do
that's
him,
why you see the whole fight he's literally just throwing a 1-2. He's
yeah,
not
it
doing
is,
anything outside of just
and
two
pressure
punches and then back.
and the nonstop pressure up,
And like
keeping
yeah,
the
just
fight up
walking him
against the
down.
cage. Yeah, yeah. It was an amazing performance from Strickland, and like you got to give it to him because it's not like this. It didn't happen over like a couple. He just won a couple rounds. Like he won basically 4 rounds, maybe all five. I mean, I don't. There's arguments out there that Izzy took the second. I guess you could give it to him. I don't know who's given him any other round. You'd have to
Right.
really stretch to give him any other round. But I personally thought it was a shutout. I didn't. I thought Izzy might have edged out the second, but that's at best. And it was a tough. It was a tough night for the champ, and he's not the champ anymore. So that's what's tough when you constantly are fighting in title fights. Is that eventually you're gonna lose, and down you
Well,
go.
there's always someone who's going to be hungrier at the moment.
Yeah, it's tough to stay on top in this sport. In that sport, it's very difficult to stay on top for too long.
Almost impossible unless you're like truly great. That's why.
Anderson
So I
Silva.
don't. So that in the beginning they're like Israel Adesanya. He's like Anderson Silva, and I was like, really? And then after the fight, I'm like, y'all really said that?
That's a mistake. It's tough to say that because, well,
Like,
here's the difference though, is that like, and nobody ever factors this in when having this conversation, but like Anderson Silva's reign was like insane. It was like 7 years, and he was beating the shit out of everybody, and then he ran into Chris Weidman, and we all know what happened. Like you got two Chris Weidman fights where he got caught fucking around in one, and then the second one was the leg injury. So it's like, and then he got old. He got old overnight, and he got beat by DC, and he beat his whole like career went in another direction. Well, here's the difference though. This is why when people say Israel is better than Silva, I'm like, okay, slow your roll. You're probably right. I always think in my head, I think when I hear that, I'm like, you're right, and you better be right about that. But that doesn't mean that he's had the better career. What Anderson Silva did was like more impressive to be champion for 7 years. That's like impossible to do and to not lose for as long as he did. But I will say that like MMA has progressed a lot. Like it's progressed a lot. Like you got to imagine that the guys that Israel is fighting right now, when he's trying to defend the belt for 7 years, he held the middleweight belt for 3 years at least, and then lost to Pereira, and then avenged it, and whatever. But like you got to imagine that the fighters that Adesanya has faced are definitely like better fighters than Silva faced.
yeah, no,
Just
you're
based on the
absolutely right.
progression of the sport, like the skill development of the sport is, it's just a different sport. They're different fighters. All of the whole standard, the baseline standard of the skill level of the sport has shifted upwards. So like, in my opinion, it's like all of these fighters are better than than the past. And like Brian, that's why all these arguments about LeBron versus Michael Jordan, it's like it's just different. Like everybody's working with a new set of, they've got new goalposts, and they've got new technology and new ways to be better, and they should be.
Uh, iron sharpens iron.
Bingo, you got it. That's it. It's
There's
exactly.
no there's no way like as good as like the people back in the day were. Like if you put them up against the talent now, like they're just too good. Like
Well, it's like
the
that. It's like the statement, like iron sharpens iron, and like we are standing on the shoulders of giants. Like this is that's true. That's true. But like who's the giant now? Like right now, there's giants, but we don't recognize them as giants because not enough time has elapsed, and the way that they progress the sport hasn't been able. It hasn't been. It's being actualized in front of us, but it's not being acknowledged because you can't see it until you see where the sport goes. Therefore, after or thereafter. So
right.
like it's just about time, and like I guarantee you in 10 years people will look back and they'll be like, yeah, Israel Adesanya, it's not always about numbers, man. It's about the game, and like how good the opposition is, because I'm telling you right now, the shit that Anderson Silva did being a champion for 7 years, that shit ain't happening. It's just like Lou Gehrig played in Joe DiMaggio hit it in 56 straight games, which is like nobody's even come close to that. I think the highest number is like 41 or something. Nobody will
You
do
just
that.
can't now because people are too good.
It's too different. Yeah. The things evolve. Like the evolution of sports is like a very real thing. And things have evolved very quickly. And sometimes I don't know, that argument against Izzy on that. People just always are trying to shit on that dude. And he's probably my favorite fighter, even still. But like, I don't think it's time to be like, oh well, so see Anderson Silva was better. Well, they did fight, you know.
Okay.
I mean, he fought a 40-year-old version of it.
All right,
I'm not
dude.
stupid. I know that. It's very different.
Oh, if you think you're better, then prove it.
48 years old. Come on in
Beat
here.
his ass.
Come on.
Oh, so bend. You're the style bender. Well, I'll bend your
Listen,
style.
he was only in his early 40s. He wasn't like 45 like he is now. It's not like he wasn't ancient, but he's clearly not in his prime. I will admit that, but whatever. Anyways, that's our UFC chat for the day. We'll circle back to UFC, and there's some big cards coming up, so we'll talk about that stuff at some point down the road. But I think we've done enough chit chatting about this, that, and the other. This is where we're at with the podcast. The podcast updates are out. The discussion about film in 2016 has been covered. The films that I've been viewing and what Errol's been peeping at has been covered. Let's shift in. Errol, you ready to rock and roll? Let's talk about 2016 Martin Scorsese's theological epic. Let's talk about Silence. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back, folks. We are ready to roll. We're talking Martin Scorsese's theological epic, an absolute masterpiece in many ways, in a giant film. It's called Silence. A big film. Errol, we saw this in the theater together, and I have to be forthright with the viewership. I have to
We saw it in the theaters.
I'm gonna say you saw it in the theaters because, yeah, I have to fully admit I made it to the theater with Errol to see this film. Very excited to see the film too when it first came out. I was so pumped to see it, and I very unfortunately have a terrible habit of falling asleep in the theater, and that is exactly what happened on this film. did not make it out of the first 40 minutes. And it had nothing to do. It wasn't a statement on the film. It just, I just get dumb tired, man. It's too comfortable in there. I don't know what it is.
He said it was a giant snooze fest, and then he just he said, "Wake me up when I see Liam Neeson." He was, that's what I said there.
The old fucking elbow nudge. I said, "Listen, this one's starting to lose me. Make sure I don't snore too loud." Let me know when something violent happens. This is a Scorsese flick.
Right.
Let me know when Ray Liotta shows up.
Let me know when they really start hurting him.
Let me know when Ray Liotta's here with this fucking with a bag of coke. I'll be back on. Call me Bobby. Where's Bobby De Niro? Where's Bobby De Niro and Joe Pesci? Let me know when somebody's getting pistol whipped in the parking lot.
You go, what? He goes, what makes you think I'm a Christian?
Wait, what? Is that a real
He's
question?
like the Joe Pesci. He's like, oh, I'm a Christian? Like, what makes you think I'm a Christian?
Yeah, so it's the same guy. Like, I'm pretty sure he like fucking screams at somebody, "You Jew motherfucker, you!" He fucking screams at people in every film. That's like a Joe Pesci line.
Christian how? Like a Christian
I'm here to amuse you. I'm here to
think I'm just here to praise you?
I'm here to fucking praise you right now. I'm here to praise you.
Oh, man, he should have got him for it.
Bro, if Joe Pesci
step on a
such a different film.
Step on a Fugami, I'll step on a Fugami.
On the fucking Fugami.
Think I'm scared to step on it? I'll dig a hole.
I ever step on? Look at the fucking lime, Liam.
Oh no.
Oh, it's beautiful. Oh shit. Yeah. I mean, that had to happen. Like, this movie's just asking for it, being that it's a Scorsese film. It's not besmirching because this is a very personal film for Martin Scorsese, but just the contrast of like where his other films go versus like what this film's trying to do is just it's there's a big gap. Big gap.
Go get your fucking rosary beads.
Go get your fucking beads to fucking home and get your fucking prayer box.
Yeah, go get your fucking alms. Go get your fucking alms box.
Motherfucker, you. He just takes a fucking stone, starts beating his head.
The Daimo just pulls out a samurai sword.
His fucking straight beheading.
Oh no!
Somebody should make like the Japanese fucking samurai version of Goodfellas. Somebody's got to do that. It's got to be done, man. Somebody's got to do that. It's got to.
Ore my shield, shine the box.
Another box.
Shine the box. He just fucking kills him.
Pulls it out.
What am I
insulted him a little bit there. You insulted him a little bit. No. Insulted him.
No.
Insulted. No.
I brought the no dishonor on his
I always think that's funny in Goodfellas when De Niro does that. He's like trying to calm him down. He's like, "Yeah, you insulted him a little bit there."
He was trying to justify the murder.
Well, he's just that guy. Like he's trying to cool things down, but he's not going to be fucked with. He's not going to be like,
no, yeah.
He's going to still back his guy. You know,
it's honestly, it's the person that like you almost want in your back corner, but like you don't.
Oh, of course you do. I mean, he's scary.
Like you want him in your corner. You want him in your corner because you don't. The only reason you want him in your corner is because you don't want him in theirs.
Yeah, right.
But it's not someone you want to like calm down. Be like, that's the dude when you're at the club and it's like, yeah, we gotta. It's like Jeremy, like, dude, we gotta go. Like,
yeah.
No, fuck that.
No, fuck that guy. Yeah, you don't.
I'm gonna play, and then you
got your hot head, and like you need somebody who's gonna pop the fucking quarter in the jukebox and get the Rolling Stones on because he's about to fucking stomp somebody.
Right. I'm about to get shot over this.
Well, anyway, we can talk about Goodfellas another time. Let's talk about it. Let's do it. We're talking about 2016's Silence by Martin Scorsese. It's an epic historical drama film. It's got theology. It's got Christianity, the oppression of Christianity in the Far East. It's got There's Buddhism in this, and some of the doctrines of Buddhism, and it's in a lot of ways, I think it's an important film. Let me introduce the film a little bit before I get into any opinionated stuff. It's based on a novel by Shusaku Endo, a Japanese author. And the title of the novel is about the same name, Silence. The screenplay was done by Jay Cox and Martin Scorsese across basically like 30 years. They've been working on this, or they had been working on this.
Man.
Yeah, Scorsese read the novel. Interesting backstory on like Scorsese writing the novel. I guess what had happened was that he had read the book. He had been gifted the book by a Japanese filmmaker. The name escapes me of whom it was. And then he read it and kind of just read it, and it just didn't click with him, didn't land with him. And he moved on from it. And then it was gifted to him. And then he brought it with him on this trip, right? I think he said in interviews that, so he took the book with him to Japan because Akira Kurosawa, one of the greatest filmmakers of all time. I've only actually seen one of his films. So, but this is all. I mean, his impact goes beyond whatever you've seen of his films. Like he's changed cinema across 60 years. And just a great filmmaker and one of the best to ever do it. And Scorsese was in agreement with him to star in a film that he was doing back in the late 80s, early 90s. Scorsese brings this copy of Silence with him. He reads the book on a bullet train in Japan. And while he's in Japan, the book starts to really sink in with him. And I think he started to connect to the film in a way that he hadn't previously. The novel. And the novel, the content within the novel is of there's so much pro-Christianity stuff in it, and it really resonates with him. He goes and buys the rights. And then this thing just becomes this passion project that I think he was very hesitant and scared to broach it because he just wanted to make sure he could do it right, because it just wasn't coming to him, the vision for the film just was not coming, and he didn't want to just rush it. So this went on for 28 years, basically. He 28 years was working on this film, and not the film itself, but so much more so the writing that he was doing with Jay Cox. And as the story of the novel goes, it basically is the story of two Jesuit priests who volunteer for a missionary project to go from Portugal, where they had been previously practicing their Christianity as fathers in Portugal. They want to go try to retrieve their mentor, Father Ferreira, out of Japan. And the story goes that the Japanese had basically on Father Ferreira's trip to Japan, that he had been captured and had renounced his faith and apostatized and basically been held hostage in Japan. They want to go find out if this is true. This is the word that has gone back to the church in Eastern Europe or Western Europe.
Well, that's the rumor,
right? But so it's rumored that that's what's happened. So they volunteer because it's their mentor. They don't believe it. They don't believe that could have possibly been Father Ferreira that would have apostatized and renounced faith.
They're acting on good faith.
Right, in a very literal sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they choose to they go to Alessandro Valignano. By the way, this book is very it actually references, it's like very nonfiction / fiction. It's a novel, but there are figures that really truly exist in the film. It's like fictionalized. Like Alessandro Valignano was an actual Italian Jesuit priest, and he's in the film. And these two pupils, they are Adam. We'll actually dive into the casting here. Andrew Garfield plays Father Rodriguez, Sebastião Rodriguez. That's your main priest. He's the kind of the protagonist between the two, and his fellow pupil is played by Adam Driver, Francisco Garope. So these are the two Jesuit priests, and they're going to, as missionaries, not only are they going to seek the truth of what happened to Father Ferreira in Japan, but they're also going to spread the word of God, like the word of Jesus Christ. So their anticipations are to go to the Far East and start spreading the gospel. And they know that Christianity exists in Japan, and they're really interested in getting there to find out the truth of what happened to Father Ferreira, but more importantly, to save the souls of Christians in Japan and to hopefully spread the word of God, like almost in a naturally organic way. They want to just plant the seed of Christianity and watch it grow. And which we'll get
to
to
them
that.
it's a to them it's a double-ended mission. So like they need to go and find out if Father Ferreira has apostatized because they don't believe he has. So if he hasn't, then they're going to save him
Mhm.
in theory because he's in trouble, of course.
They think that he's been
And
captured by the Japanese.
right, and their people are relying on him. And the other end is they're like, what if it is real? What if he has apostatized?
They
Same case, they need to save him.
need to save him, right? They need to.
Either way, they need to go because he is his either he is in danger or his soul is in danger, and it is our job to save him. Like so, and they're like,
Because
if we have
he's their
to,
mentor. We should mention that, like, and by the way, Father Ferreira, played by Liam Neeson, he is their mentor, and he has guided them on the spiritual path up until this point, until he decided to not pilgrimage, that's the wrong word, to missionary to Japan to spread the word of God in the Far East. So that's why he means so much to them, and this is also why they have hesitations about the truth regarding his renunciation of faith.
so while I don't believe that like the spreading of religion should be like a death sentence, in that with them go like the main problem to the Japanese is them going to a foreign land and spreading something where like that they don't want happening. Like so I don't want to say it's predatory, but I can't think of a better word at the moment with having other
For the Jesuits
yes, for
role.
the Jesuits to go in and because like they do have a pure intention, and that's to spread the word of God because they believe that you cannot be saved without it, and it is
Yeah, but so can I disagree with you just partially? And it's not so much a disagreement because I actually think there's a lot of there's a lot of the film that actually tried to tackle that a little bit. It tries to take that on to some degree. And this is we're just going to get right into the meat and potatoes of the topic, which is our missionaries in a land that has outlawed Christianity. Do they have is it within their rights to act violently upon and it is violence, like it's an interesting depiction of Buddhist
um
violence, which I think is
it's
complicated.
it's in the movie, if you ask me. It's so they call Unzen or the those hot springs, they call them hells.
Little
And
hells, right? Yeah.
right, and I mean it's just a hot place. It's gray, like it's lacking of any like color or life. I If you ask me, it's almost like Japan is like depicted as like purgatory. Like it's a
Yeah,
place
that'd be cool. I'd be I could buy into that.
like it's like a land in between like religion and like life, like where you still have people doing it, but it's where the hardest test is being given to like Christians.
Right. And also,
Like
like, that's the complication. So like that's where I get I'm compli I feel a complication with, like, where you say like the predatory aspect of trying to spread the word of Jesus and Christianity in a country that largely is in a lot of ways is not accepting of it. And they talk about that when they refer to it as like the swamp. Like Father Ferreira tells him, like, it will not grow here because this is a swamp. Like, it's just not accepted here. It's just not. And I feel that is like, so that is like that's what makes the dialogue and the writing so important. And I think this is why Martin Scorsese like took so much time to like get this right, is that you want the arguments of the Buddhist Japanese who are acting out against the Christian practitioners, the priests, the priests, the Jesuits who come and they try to spread the word of God, you want their arguments against them to be like very convincing, and I think they are, and there's merit to them. However, I do I do have an issue though, because in my opinion, it's that so the missionaries are looking to spread the word of God to everyone in Japan, to all Japanese, which in that's where I think there's merit in what you say, in that it's, predatory is probably a little bit strong, but because
That's yeah, I
their faith is
believe that
pure,
too.
and yeah, it's for lack of a better term, and we'll use that term momentarily, but like what I also think is happening too as a byproduct is that you do have Japanese Christians that are already there and they're living in hiding, because those Japanese Christians are not trying to spread the word of God. They're just trying to live within Christianity, but they happen to be in a land that outlaws it. So that's
Right.
where it becomes, that's where there's like a morality. So like they actually, and they also can't confess their sins. So like a doctrine of Christianity obviously is to like wash yourself of your sins by confessing to a priest. Christian priests aren't allowed within the boundaries of Japan. So that you have all these
So they
Christian.
can't even well, that's what the people of Godo say. Like they walk up and they knock on the door, and Garupe's like, don't answer it. They didn't do the one thing. And then Rodriguez is like, I'm going out there.
Going
And he
out there.
goes, I think it's like probably one of the like in a very sad movie with not a lot of like high watermarks. Um, these guys walked from from one part of the island to a whole other like part of the island. Their feet are bleeding, and he goes like, we don't even have like a gisima. So like alls we can he says verbatim, alls we can do is pray.
Right.
So
That's
like they can't do baptisms, they can't like confess for their sins. Like alls they can do is quote unquote like pray, hope for the best.
right. And so
And
like I think that's why like that's why Father Rodriguez, played by Andrew Garfield, versus Father Garope, played by Adam Driver, there's like this, there's a stake between them in their standard for their faiths. Like Father Garupe is a little bit more strict, and like I think he's like playing things by the book. Like he knows what the procedures are for confession. He knows what like, but Rodriguez is on a spiritual mission here, and like
right.
very clearly he's willing to bend. Like he's conflicted, and it's interesting because it's almost like Father Garupe's faith is more um his faith in God is actually stronger.
So, and that's the crazy thing too, because like the whole time, Garupe even himself is saying that like at one point when they get separated, uh Rodriguez says something to him, and then Garupe says, "I wish I had your strength." Like before they go off in different like places. Like even Garupe himself like admits that like you are the one of stronger faith.
Wait,
Rodriguez,
Garupe says that to Rodriguez,
yes, he says to Rodriguez that
but I
I
think it's
wish
the
I.
opposite. I think that,
Well,
well,
no,
no,
so technically that is the case because Garupe doesn't
commits
fold from
martyrdom.
yeah, he doesn't fold from the book at all. Like when uh oh, what's his name? He's my favorite character. Baby, bear with me for a second.
Oh, I know who you're gonna pick just because I know you, the interpreter.
No. So that is honestly like kind of yes, the interpreter. You got me in a box, but no, the guy that not Kenshitaro, but the other dude, not the Jisama. I think it's like it begins with an M. Uh, Mokichi. Mokichi, the dude who's like
He's the one that's killing the cross. That's crucified.
yes, the dude who lasts longest on there.
Yeah. Okay,
So
yeah. Amazing character. Amazing character. Go ahead.
yes. So Mokichi is one of my favorite characters uh because so he says something to Rodriguez as well. He's like Rodriguez is like your strength or your faith gives me strength or something to that degree. And then he goes like I don't know if it's faith, but like I like have this love for God. And he's like that Rodriguez, he goes, I have this love for God. Is that the same? And then Rodriguez goes, like, it has to be. Like I would imagine that. Um, so that dude, uh, for like if you ask me, he was like one of the closest people. It's almost every single person that in that movie, almost every single person had like if they weren't asked to like be Jesus or like portray like Jesus in his entirety at one point, then they were playing like some biblical character. Uh even so uh Mokichi, he was willing to do that like wholeheartedly the whole time. He was like, I accept this. Doesn't matter because I'm going to go to paradise. All that fun stuff doesn't matter. Um, they ask Kenshijiro to do the same thing as well. They go, "Hey, you're a man of God. You confess your sins. Why don't you sacrifice yourself? You're not even part of this village. They might even be lenient." And Kenshijiro's like, "You guys are crazy. I'm not doing that." While everyone
He's
else is
also,
like,
we should clarify who that character is. So the Kichijiro is the character who actually gets them to the island, and it's discovered at some point that he was willing to. So they, well, let's for the listeners, let's like fill them in on what the apostasy looks like in this film and in Japan and in Buddhist Japan. In this film takes place in the mid 1600s, the mid 17th century.
Edo period Japan.
Right. In a time in which the actual church, the church in Western Europe is actually under like very intense prosecution. This is like a very difficult time for the.
It's outlawed
Well, it's
outright.
outlawed in Japan, but it's even undergoing a lot of like scrutiny in Europe for a number of things that we could get into. But so like apostasy looks like in Japan at this time, they would take the hidden Christians that are living in the shogunate, who are the Japanese officials would like they would seek out and sniff out the Christians, find them, and then force them to apostatize by like stepping on what is a fumii, which is like an image of Christ that's basically carved in stone, and they would have to step upon. And that would announce and they would play like psychological tricks and like tell especially on the priests in this film, they would express that like, oh, you can still have your faith, just do this, it's just a formality.
So
It's just
it's
a, he actually
I
calls it too.
they literally say that verbatim, that it's just a formality,
Just a
and
formality, just do it.
I'd like to think that that is like a like you said, like a psychological way
Oh, they're
to
very
break it
clever
down,
about this thing.
right? Like they're like the interpreter, he's like, the first thing he says to him, he's like, he's like, peace be upon you. You know what I mean? He's like very like formal, like respecting of his religion, but he's like, dude, he's like, it's just not gonna work here. He's like, you're in a bad spot.
It's the
He's like, just
swamp, as Father Ferrer says. It's a swamp, and it's been
yeah.
tried to spread here, and it just won't.
And so
But like the problem with that is that there already are Christians there, and this is like the conundrum of the film.
but
Or not the
but
film, but the story. Go ahead.
but like, why is so Rodriguez in his like fervor, uh when Mokichi asks him, he's like, "What do I do? What do I do when I'm asked?" And that, I think that's what I was getting to when I first said like he's like one of my favorite characters. He wasn't worried about when he was sacrificing himself to die. He's like, "What do I do when they ask me to trample on
He
the
tells him to
Fujimi?"
trample. He tells him to.
He says trample, and
Garupe
that's
is
when
against that.
Garupe, exactly. That's
He's
when
against, yeah.
Garupe is like, he's like,
Father Garupe
nope,
does not want him to because it's a
nope.
formality thing, and like
Yep. He's like, if you believe in it, he's like, just pray for strength. He's like, don't go against the religion. But as you see as the movie progresses, Rodriguez goes through the same psychological turmoil that Father Ferrer does. Father
because the
Ferrer goes
strength.
through the same.
That's why it's the opposite. That's why it's the opposite of what you'd expect. So, like, obviously, the film is centered around Andrew Garfield's character, Father Rodriguez, and yet
Mhm.
Adam Driver's character, Father Garupe, is like almost like the secondary character. He's the secondary priest. You can tell he's kind of like second in line, and you're the way
Well,
that
yeah, it's their journey.
it's their journey, but it's mostly Rodriguez's journey, right? And in a lot of ways, because he's your narrator, he does the voiceover for the narration. So you assume that he's the guy we're kind of seeing. He's the lens in which we're seeing the film. But here's where I'm going to answer your question. The reason that he tells him to trample is not because, and this is why the film is so tricky, and this is why Martin Scorsese is such a good writer, and I wish he wrote more of his films. He doesn't write a lot of his films. This is only the second film he's written since Casino, like from 1995. Like it's been like he doesn't write his films very often or co-write them. He co-wrote this with Jay Cox. But this is why it's so tricky. Father Rodriguez is the weaker character. He represents human weakness. He represents the weakest version. Like his willingness to trample, he doesn't truly understand, which is why I'm going to shift this. I'm going to shift this forward a little bit. That the reason that you discover this about why he's misguided. He's truly misguided. He's kind of put in his position because he is a father. He's a priest. So like he is who the hidden Christians of Japan who are hiding from the shogunate. He's who they're looking to on Godo Island for salvation and confession to wash away sins because he's just a vessel for them to alleviate their sins, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're stronger than him. They're the stronger religious characters in the
He
film.
says that.
Their faith is stronger than his, and he represents human weakness. And the reason that you know this is because he doesn't get it, right? Like he doesn't actually get it. And the reason that you know that he doesn't get it until the end of the film is that he is subjecting himself to martyrdom in a different way, different than Garupe. Garupe like subjects himself. He literally gives his life to
save someone else.
To quote unquote, he knew he wasn't going to save someone else, but he couldn't bear with not dying with them. Like he commits true martyrdom. Like he dies in the name of God to try to save, to hold up another, in the scene, and I'll explain for the viewers, a bunch of the Christians are wrapped in straw and then pushed off of a small boat off the coast and off of one of the coastlines into water where they're going to sink because the straw, once the straw gets wet, it'll start to sink and they'll drown. And then Father Garupe swims out to try to save one of them and hold them up, and then he drowns as well and dies. And Rodriguez is restrained and he has to watch the whole thing. But why he's the weaker character is you see the scene, you see when it happens, you see when it's discovered why he's the weakest character. He's actually the weakest character until this moment, because he's the weakest character because he thinks he's Christ. And you see that when he's looking, he sees the reflection of Jesus Christ in the water when he's looking.
He has the delusion.
He has the delusion where he actually
sees
Christ.
And so Father Ferrer, Liam Neeson, he tells him something to that air as well. He says these people are dying for God. He says, no, they're not. They're dying for you.
Exactly.
He's like, they're dying for the idea of God, just like you are doing this for the idea of that. Like if you actually believed truly, you would what is it? You would spread the gospel to every living creature. You wouldn't be hiding. You wouldn't
be in hiding. You'd be willing.
You wouldn't be scared of persecution. You would welcome it.
Right.
You would be put on the cross. You would.
Well, that's what makes the Japanese so like brilliant in this film is like they keep this is what's so clever about like their approach. They keep the fathers alive. They keep them well fed. They keep them washed. They keep them. And I actually thought about this after the fact because I remember talking to my wife about this and saying, like, why is his fucking hair always like Father Rodriguez, Andrew Garfield's character, his hair always looks clean. He always like there's parts of the film that like it takes me out. I'm just like, oh, this dude's like washing his hair on like offset and like come on, man, commit to the it's the 1600s. Your hair shouldn't be so clean. Like, why is his hair like combed and brushed and like what are you doing? Like, I feel like this was a miss. It's a hold on, let me finish. There's a reason for that. It's because the Japanese are keeping him that way because they are preserving. And I haven't heard Martin Scorsese speak to this in interviews, but I wish I could ask him this question. If I could ask him one question about this film, it would be this. It would be like, did you intentionally make part of the Father Rodriguez character look as though he's been well fed, he's been well taken care of, he has like the vanity of he gets to experience the vanity of like self-care. because the Japanese, he is a substitution for Christianity by the Japanese. The Japanese do not want to outlaw Christianity in and of itself. It's not valuable for them to completely wipe Christianity from the country. It's to keep it's to keep alive the ideological state of Christianity and then to thwart it. So that the Buddhist who consider
to prove it wrong.
exactly right, exactly to
It's
prove
not one thing to just like, because he says it. He goes, every time we kill a priest, we make martyrs.
you just make more
But
exactly
that's also Rodriguez says something almost to the almost to answer your question exactly. He says to the interpreter, you've kept me well fed to turn my body against me.
exactly right to make him think to make him right.
That it's not that bad. Like, we're not the bad people. We're doing this, but like, you're the bad person for that. He's like, you've been trying to turn my body against me.
Right. Yeah, it's so smart. It's such a smart, and it's smart because it's not smart. It's a smart trick by Scorsese, but it's not as clever as the Japanese in doing this in real life, because I'm sure they did. Because like I just think this process of persecution that's undergone in the film is actually really, it's a really intelligent way of going about manipulating a religion
Um,
from not existing in the country. It's not to wipe it out, but to keep the idea alive, so there's something to actually rail against.
right. Can't you need a monster? You need something to fight against.
Right. And
I
so
think
like
I think the way they handle it is perfect because it is so scary. It's one thing just to have like the people who are opposing it, like their religion or whatever, just to come in and be like, "You're wrong because you're different." Blah blah blah. They're like, "No, we understand this. It doesn't work here, and we are going to force you to say that, like through blood, like
yeah,
whether you like it or not."
well, because like that's why they keep the priests, so the priests are not like outright murdered, because they are the vessel. Like it's just like you just said, as they said in the film about the martyrdom, like killing a priest produces martyrdom, but like the priests are closer to the ideology in a manifestation form than the followers, than the Japanese Christian followers, because they are closer to God by virtue of fact, by virtue of just position within the church. So like keeping them alive and keeping them, and also, by the way, like if they apostatize, they're a step. If a follower sees a priest apostatize, they're likely to do it too, which is why. And they also use, they're playing the long game. They're trying to convert as many Christians as possible, and the way to do that is to flip the faith of the priest. And the way to flip the faith of the priest is by murdering his followers in front of them, which they do.
Right.
Which I mean, what do you think about tell me what you think about the crucifixion scene? I mean, that is probably one of the hardest. That's one of the scenes most hard to watch in any.
So
I mean, it's awful. It's just awful.
so like the Garupe death scene, it's like a twofold. It's a death and like a rebirth. It's like a baptism.
Right. Yeah, it truly is.
Um, my in that rough scene, one of my favorite like aspects of it is how Rodriguez, he notes that they're given sake as Jesus was given vinegar by the Romans.
Okay.
So I think that's one of them, or I think it may be one of the most misinterpreted like verses or things in the Bible, because just because I'm ignorant and I interpreted it wrong, so I'm like, oh, everyone else must have too because I'm a genius. So in the Bible, when Jesus is put on the cross, the Roman soldiers feed him vinegar and then put him up there. And in my mind, like I think a lot of other people, they're like, it's gross, bro. Like what? They're just like making him drink that. That's disgusting. Like they're just adding insult to injury. Like, here, drink some of this. Like, dork. Like that'd be bitter. It'd be gross. But that is what they carried on them. Uh, to drink, because vinegar, it has electrolytes. It's a salt. Like an acid. It's got, so you have a vinegar water mixture, and you drink some of that, and it kind of revitalizes you a little bit. So with them, exactly like they were doing to the Jesuits, keeping them alive, keeping them well fed, they didn't put a Mokichi and the Jisma and the other guy up on those crosses like to die in a couple days. They're like, nah, here, get some stuff to eat. You guys got 3 days to live
Preservation,
your life.
right? Because
Yeah, and then
like
here's this too.
the preservation of something of like another's faith um to because like, and this is, it makes you actually think people are just so much fucking smarter than like, I don't know why. In it's obviously
You had
largely
less to
true.
worry about.
Yeah, it's just like you could think about things a little more deeply. That's all. I don't mean to say smarter is the wrong word, but like you
You had more time.
there was just more depth. Well, no, it's not even some. I mean, yeah, that is obviously true that there was more time, but there was people could think things to a deeper level, and that's what this film really is. This film is like, and Scorsese has actually said this in interviews that like this film is about the depth of faith. It's also about, so like Father Rodriguez, the experience that he undergoes, obviously watching many followers, Christian followers, be murdered in front of him and tortured, and just the awful things that go on in the film. It's when he finally, so let's dive into it, right? So I'll just let me update the where we're at in the plot, just to move the conversation a little bit ahead. So at this point in the film, right before this scene we're going to talk about, Rodriguez is then he eventually gets he's captured by, because the character, the what's his name? I'm sorry, let me get his name really quick. Kichijiro. When that character basically twice betrays him, right? At least twice. Um, Gets him captured by the shogunate. Then he's now captured by the shogunate. He's having to witness all of this violence around him. This like horror of these horrible acts against his Christian followers. He is now finally talking. He sees Father Ferreira. So Father Ferreira comes to him, sits with him, and expresses some of the things we've been talking about like talking about Japan like a swamp. Nothing will grow here. Like the Christian belief will not grow here. You can plant your seeds here, but they just won't grow. It
He
won't take.
says the most important thing during that whole thing. He says, well, other than they're dying for you, they're not dying for God. He says, the whole thing was a mistranslation. They're deifying the Son of God. He's like, they are looking at the sun, Desu
Right.
Sama,
Yes. This is exactly what
Deus
actual
Sama,
days.
and then they think it's the sun, like so, like the Son of God rose on the or he rose on the third day in Christianity, but in Japanese
It's
Christianity, he rises every day because he's the sun god.
it's
But
not even
that's
the same faith, but like that's what's so
so they hint at that too in the beginning, like when
true.
Rodriguez is there, with when Rodriguez is there and Garupe in the first island when they're just doing what they can do because they're priests. It's funny because Garupe is the first thing they show, and he's doing confession. They
Yep.
speak fluent Japanese,
Yeah, they
so
do.
he knows like a little bit, but he's like, "Wait, what are you saying? Like, what's going on?" So they're confessing like everything, but he doesn't know what's going on. Like he does not hear. He technically doesn't hear their confession because he doesn't know what they're saying.
That's why he represents the weakest character in the film while also like being the protagonist.
Well,
Like,
no. Garupe is the one who's trying to listen to. Well, they both listen to confessions, but the first person they're showing Garupe, and Garupe's like, wait, what'd you say? And then right after
oh, right.
that, they
I see
show,
what you mean. Yeah.
yeah, right after that, they show Rodriguez, and he's doing a baptism. And then after they're done, the parents look so happy, and they say, "So now the kid will live in paradise here."
That's not the faith. That's not
And
Christian.
then yeah, Garube
Different.
is like, No, like it's not. No, it's not going to be paradise here." He's like, "Oh, they're with God though," and he's like, "Well, no, God is here with us right now, but they're not with God. There's a place being prepared for us right now." and they just both look at each other, and then Group is like, I'm frustrated with myself because I don't like I'm having a hard time like conveying the stuff. But then
That's
Liam
why
Neeson says,
it's such a convincing film. And this is why it, in a lot of ways, it's so brilliant. It's so brilliant in this way because it actually takes on it doesn't it would be so easy to make a Christian film or a religious film in any way. It would be so easy for a filmmaker to say, I'm going to make a Christian film or I'm going to make a religious film.
the
And I'm really
passion.
going to go deep into like the questions and I'm going to really kind of go down the rabbit hole with some of the questions about faith and about religion and the doctrines. And like, it's so easy to do. Scorsese does something that's so fucking unique. And I respect him so much for this is that he not only does that, but he also invokes the legitimate questions of doubt, of faith and doubt. Like and then produces his own. Like this is like the most personal film I think he's ever made because I really do feel like these are the questions of because he's like a very like he's a deep Catholic. Like I think he was almost a priest himself at one point
Ooh,
before going into film. And like I think these are the questions that like he grapples with when he's um when he's thinking about his own faith. And let me just read a quote. So like he was asked, and he obviously made The Last Temptation of Christ, which is like obviously a different passion project from the late '80s. But when asked why he retained interest in the project over 26 years, Scorsese said this quote: as you get older, ideas come and go, questions, answers, loss of the answer again, and more questions. And this is what really interests me. Yes, the cinema and the people in my life and my family are most important, but ultimately, as you get older, there's got to be more. Silence is just something that I'm drawn to in that way. It's an obsession. It has to be done. It's a strong, wonderful, true story, a thriller in a way, but it deals with those questions. And that is truth. Like that is the truth of this film is that, and we'll talk about like the title and it's like and how appropriate and like powerful the title is, but like I just think that this film is willing to it's willing to talk about, and that's a bold thing for a filmmaker to do, especially one that believes in God, to like bring the interpretations of faith across people,
it
across
it's
culture,
almost it almost seems blasphemous.
truly, like willingly too.
Right, like because you had like because to make something so in depth, you have to be willing to entertain like the other side, like understand where they're coming from.
Right. And so we'll talk a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about the title. Like obviously the title of the book and the title of the film is the same. It's Silence. And in a lot of ways, I mean, in my interpretation, the idea of silence is the like calling the film and calling the book silence isn't necessarily about like a lot of people can interpret it as like the silence of God when like trying to find answers in terms of to maintain one's faith, right?
Mhm.
In my opinion, it's actually different. It's about the interpretation of the silent spaces in between your prayer. Like, and I'm not a religious person, but like I have a lot of interest in religious doctrine because I don't think there's like it's just such an important part of like human psychology and human like it's undeniably like this just it's just baked in so many ways. So it's like very important to understand to some degree and to give it its due diligence. Um, but from my perspective, it's like it's more the concept of silence isn't like, oh, I'm not hearing from God. I'm not hearing from God in the ways I thought. So now I'm doubtful and my faith is like weakened. It's more so about like how we interpret the silent spaces in between prayer. Like when we're not asking for God, what those moments of silence mean. I'd be interested to hear what's your interpretation of like why the content is called it's referred to
Oh,
as.
I'm a basic I'm a basic bitch. You had me on the first interpretation. I think it's just a on the nose interpretation of like the silence of God just being a like a euphemism for like faith.
Right. So
Like
like being able to grapple with like when you call upon him and he doesn't answer,
yeah, you
do
need
you
to like
renounce your
even
faith
right.
or do you persist?
He's never technically answered, but he's always there if you believe. So like what does the silence mean to you? Like, will it ever like get to a point where like just because he doesn't respond, you no longer believe? If that's what it takes, then you don't have strong faith.
Well, like, so Scorsese talks about like, and we'll dive a little bit into the as we're kind of inching a little bit closer. And I do want to say I think that this topic in this film actually deserves like a 5 hour podcast. Like, in all seriousness, and Errol, you and I will
Strap in, dude.
well, like, we could, but like we've got, this is we can we'll talk more about this film, in the future, of course. But in my interpretation, it's like I think that Father Rodriguez realizes at the end of the film, and this is when it turns, right? He realizes at one point that the vessel for his faith is within him. It's not within his actions. Right. So like there's like obviously the doctrine he's expected to uphold. There's the, he resists the apostatization and actually which actually leads to the death of followers, to the death of faithful Christians in Japan. And I think that eventually he realizes that he is actually his soul himself. It's like this is what makes this such a deeply personal film for Scorsese and for the writer of the book, obviously, that like he realizes that his faith is within him, and it's not about the extradition of faith by the people around him. It's like your faith is within, and your actions are not. He realizes that like stepping on the Fumi is not like is
And then
you can't apostatize unless you truly renounce faith within.
and then what does he do after that? What does he do once you see that flip?
He
He
absolutely
stays he stays silent.
he doesn't say a word.
He doesn't say
It's
anything.
so true. He says
He
nothing.
just writes. He doesn't care. It's not a big deal because like
His
you
faith
said,
is strong within. It's
it's
when
on
he
the inside.
that's when the character flips. That's when his faith becomes strong. Like his faith is weak the whole film up until this
Well,
point. It's
and
so
he's
strange because it's such a beautiful flip because his
well and
faith is actually weak until he apostatizes. And when he
right, and
finally does,
but that's
that's when his weakness is alleviated and his faith becomes truly strong.
that's what he says. He asked that question. He goes, earlier in the film, he's like, why must the people in this land suffer so much? Why is this test so hard? Like, you could be like a Christian on the other side of the world and like have it easy, but like if you just happen to say you're a Christian here, like beheaded, like hot springs. It's to the point when they first run up on Kinchichiro, uh he's like, hey, you're a Christian? He's like, no, no, no Christian. No, he just has PTSD. He's like,
He
nope.
has to.
he's an he's across the world. And he's like, are you a Christian? He's like, nope, you got me fucked up. He's like,
Right.
nah, son. He's like, they kill them. He's like, I am a good boy. But Kinchichiro, the name translates, the kanjis translate to good men, or good judgment, or like good management, or good luck quell
Right.
male.
Yep.
But pretty much, I look at it as just like a good judged man. While Kenshiro is arguably the biggest piece of garbage in the whole movie, I think he is the closest version to actual man.
Yeah, it's so true. Well, he's the most important character in the film, in my opinion, because like he is the representation of like because that's what the whole film is truly about. It's about the acceptance of weakness within the human spirit. Like
Yes,
like that's what the film is trying to reach for.
he has the worst backstory out of everyone.
Yeah. Oh, he's because you could view him as cowardly because he didn't and it's so complicated because it's so
Well, so
hard to
you
not
view him
like
as
dislike him
cowardly, but
because
you view him as
he watched his family
right.
burned alive.
So he watched his family get burned alive, and like so, like I was saying with the PTSD, he's like, no, I'm not a Christian. He says, uh, I'd like to think that he doesn't believe he doesn't believe he's deserving of redemption to like God. He's like, I am this vile of a person where God will shun me away. He says, oh, what's he say? He goes, he goes, I smell the flesh and I see the flames all the time. And he's like, I thought I might be deserving of like redemption or like a deserving of like God's grace because like in my dreams the flames aren't so bright.
Oh my God. And I mean, beautiful writing, but so fucking heartbreaking. I mean, just
Dude, so like he's living in hell every
truly.
day. He's just remembering his family being burned alive in front of him, looking at him like you are a coward, you like have forsaken us, and you're not gonna be where we are when you die because you're not going to be saved. Like you denounce God. So like he's like, this is the last time I'm seeing them and they're in agony.
I mean, just powerful stuff. What we're going to do next, we're just going to take a quick break. Let's take a quick break, Errol. We'll be back in a minute. So just hang tight. In there, folks. We're back. We're talking Silence by Martin Scorsese, 2016 epic monster film. We've had there's just so much to unpack, and it's such a deep film with such a deep message and such a plethora of content to religiosity and theological aspects to the film. Just provide a really dense amount of discussion. So to round that out a little bit, I do want to talk a little bit about the logistics of the film, just for a quick moment, Errol, if you'll oblige me. Let's talk. So, let's talk about the box office. It did flipping terrible at the box office, which is, hey, you can't attribute any of that to us because we were in that. Listen, I might have slept.
Yeah, I was like, maybe people weren't sleeping through it.
Oh, I paid my damn ticket though. He got my money.
You should have bought a second one.
I should have brought us.
Maybe it wouldn't have been bad if half the people who fell asleep bought a second ticket.
It's a shame. It's a shame. I mean, the production, it cost about 40 to 50 million to make. And
three, a lot of star-studded cast.
Yeah, I mean, at 40 to 50 million make, it grossed 7.1 million in the US and 16.6 million in other territories for a worldwide of 20.7 million.
It broke even.
No, I lost. That's the total worldwide.
Wait, how much did it cost? Oh, 40?
It lost money. Yeah, it lost money. It cost 40 to 50 million. It only grossed 23.7. I mean, over time, it'll probably balance out. I mean, potentially. But the critics loved it. It was because it's such an incredible film, and only a guy like Martin Scorsese can do something like this. Where like, you know how he is. If you look back at his catalog, like he's just this guy. He makes one for the studios and then he'll make one for himself. And this was very clearly for himself. Let's talk a little Martin Scorsese. I want to pay homage to this guy. I mean, this is probably personally this is my favorite filmmaker of all time. Like in terms of like career, like he's my guy. He's made more of my favorite movies than any other filmmaker. I mean, I just love. I've seen almost everything he's done. I just love everything he's done. He's so good. You're talking. He puts out Mean Streets in 1973. It's a massive, like a cult classic, right? Alice
Mhm.
Doesn't Live Here Anymore, which is critically acclaimed, didn't do so well at the box office. Not a monster hit, but a good film. Um, Taxi Driver in '76, which is personally one of my all time favorite films.
Me too.
I
I'm
think
right
that's
there.
genuinely one of the best films ever made. It's in probably my top 15, I would say. I actually just was thinking about this the other day. I think De Niro in Taxi Driver is the best acting performance that's ever been captured on film.
You think so?
Yes, I absolutely. I cannot believe, and I didn't think that until I saw it again for probably I've seen it probably 5 or 6 times, and I just watched it with my wife over the summer, and I paid really close attention to it, and his acting performance in that film is so fucking specific in like every little detail. I think it's if it's not the greatest acting performance is certainly in the top three. Um, and another one in the top three probably with that is Raging Bull, which comes out a few years later. Raging Bull about Jake LaMotta, just another amazing film. King of Comedy was I've actually not seen that. After Hours, not seen that. Color of Money with Paul Newman and Tom Cruise, great film. Follow up to the Hustler. Um, Last Temptation of Christ, which is in this vein. So like this, as you can see, he'll make like 5 or 6 studio films that are like maybe their Raging Bull is probably considered a little bit of an art house film in some ways, but it's also it certainly is a it did reach the mainstream and it's became one of the greatest films ever made. Um, King of Comedy, another that's a studio. After Hours, Color of Money. These are all like studio films, and then he makes The Last Temptation of Christ, which he got absolutely shellacked for by the public. It was written by Paul Schrader, and it was another religious film, obviously, that he and Jay Cox wrote together. And I've never seen it. Willem Dafoe plays Christ, which Willem Dafoe, I mean, we've talked about him on the podcast and what an amazing actor. I mean, um, but then he goes on to make Goodfellas in 1990. He makes Cape Fear in 91 a year later, which is fucking amazing. Age of Innocence, which is, I've actually not seen that. And I owe myself that film. Casino, which is basically another Goodfellas, but like in a different world, and it's excellent. Kundun, which is another Japanese film, I believe, right? Does that take place in? No, it's Chinese. I'm sorry, it takes place in Tibet. Um, Bringing Out the Dead, Gangs of New York, The Aviator, The Departed, Shutter Island, Hugo, Wolf of Wall Street, leading all the way up to Silence. He follows up Silence after that with The Irishman, which was incredible. And
Um, I really like The Aviator.
dude, The Aviator is amazing, right? I love it too.
Yeah.
In all fairness, though, he didn't really he directed the film, but like I think he kind of took the film over more so. That's what I've heard is that like he kind of came in last minute. Like the film was like not done, but like in production, and he kind of like I think Michael Mann was directing it or something, and he kind of took the project over. So I don't know how much like creative oversight he had on it, but nonetheless, a great film.
Oh
Truly
yeah.
amazing film. Um, so before we move into what he's got coming next, Errol, what would you consider to be your favorite of Martin Scorsese's works? I mean, I actually truly think Silence is in the mix for me, but it's certainly not my favorite. What would you consider to be your favorite Scorsese flick?
Man, it would be hard for me to not put this over Taxi Driver.
This
Just
over
because,
Taxi Driver or Taxi Driver is your that's you that
yeah, I would say Taxi Driver is my baby.
yeah that's a good pick. It
But
oh
if there was any other movie that would be it, it would be this movie. It would be Silence. I
Really?
love Wolf of Wall Street, and I believe without telling you how the sausage is made, I think that's what we're gonna be doing sometime soon.
Wolf of
If we didn't
Wall
say it
Street.
before, yeah,
Yeah.
not to
Listen,
spill the beans.
we'll announce it now. So like the 10-year anniversary for Wolf of Wall Street is coming this December. You can mark it down. We're gonna dive into that film head first this coming December. I've got a couple of Christmas related ideas. Love that time of year, and that's a great time of year for movies. It's a great time of year for music. It's a great time of year for books. It's a great time of year for a lot of that kind of stuff. That's what we do here at the Peripheral Views podcast. So we can announce that right now. We are planning a full film podcast on the Wolf of Wall Street for December at the 10-year anniversary mark of the film. So look out for that. That's coming. That's definitely coming. Also before then, and like that'll be our second Scorsese flick, and those films were back to back, 2013, 2016. Interesting that we started with his modern stuff before getting into like Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, and Goodfellas, and like the original
Right.
classics. But no problem. We'll get back to those at some point. But I will say this: we might even have a special feature, another special feature podcast. I'm Errol. I don't even think I haven't really talked about this with you, but I'm sure you'll be down to do it. We will probably also be doing a special feature podcast, a little special preview episode on Killers of the Flower Moon when that comes out.
Ooh, yeah, for sure.
So you, Errol, you're just as well as I are very anxious to see that, and I'm sure you'll see it in theaters, as will I when it does come out. That's Scorsese's next flick. Leonardo DiCaprio, Robert De Niro, Lily Gladstone, Jesse Plemons, John Lithgow, Brendan Fraser. A lot of great actors in this film. It's coming out in about a month, and I couldn't be more
And then
excited about it.
we're going on a little Scorsese bender. I
Yeah,
do not
sure. I
mind
mean,
that.
listen, when he puts it, he doesn't do films as frequently as he used to. It's usually once every 4 or 5 years. So when he does, you got to stop and talk about him. And I'm glad to do so because he's incredible. He's probably my favorite filmmaker person. He's had such a great career, and I've listened to his interviews, and I just think he's such a good person. I really like him as a person. He seems like I feel like I'm related to him. I don't know why. He just talks my language. I guess that's kind of
Um, I really like the it's kind of like there's an air of realness to like everything he does. Like it seems like rooted. I don't
grounded.
want to say like in like grounded would be a better word. I don't because I didn't want to say like rooted in reality, but the characters always seem very fleshed out, very personable. Like no one ever says something that's like truly out of place. Like like if someone's on screen, like they're there for a reason. Like they have something to bring.
Yeah, I think he's a New York City guy. I mean, he's from New York, and man, he just knows how to make film. He does. He knows all the tricks. He knows all the production. Um, he knows how to push he knows how to push the narrative forward. He knows how to use music. Like he knows how to write. Like he's just everything you want from a filmmaker. And this film Silence is such an unbelievable display of like, listen, I know how to make the big budget Wall Street film that's fucking showy, and like there's millions of dollars being pumped into it, and I've got the like most handsome fucking movie star in the world leading, but I also know how to break down and slip away for a couple of years and then come back into and make a passion project, a religious passion project that like speaks to my soul and speaks to my upbringing and speaks to my ancestors and speaks to
Right.
like
And
my
to like a period or like an era and stuff that like was kind of I don't want to say like slept on, but like this is something that happened that like is just kind of swept underneath. And
it's
I
not
think that
untrue. It's based on
yeah,
truth for sure.
and I like uh uh what Rodriguez says. He goes like he says something to the tune. He's like, why do these people need to suffer so much? Like they have the hardest battle. And I do think like being a Christian in Edo period Japan was probably like the hardest time to be a Christian. Like I don't like that. That was beheadings. The hot springs. I love how they called the place Unzen. Unzen.
Yeah. Oh,
unzen,
right. Yeah.
just
Perfect.
not zen, like
Just
the
not
not
Buddhist. Just
peace. Yeah, it's
we
the
leave
opposite of
Buddhism.
peace.
We leave the doctrines of Buddhism behind us when we come,
Right. And
because
like
we're
so
here.
everything else is like peace. When you're there, it's like not peace. So that's how I can't think of a better word for hell. Like if heaven is zen, then unzen would be hell.
Yeah, it's a beautiful film, and I do feel like we could talk it to death. We could talk about it forever, just because. And once again, like I wanted to make sure that we paid respect to the film, like the film itself,
Yeah.
because like the theology around the film and the religiosity of the film and the spirituality of the film is a conversation that's going to go on forever. And I hope
Yeah. So
I
the
we revisit the topic maybe in like a fireside chat. Like we've always talked about doing a fireside chat as a series in the podcast where Errol and I will sit down and kind of just like discuss some of these deeper elements of like human nature. And this film is like a great catalyst for this. But like
um
I do want to pay close attention to like how much we talk about like just what an impressive piece of filmmaking it is, because it really is truly that.
yeah, the one thing I did want to like touch upon is with Rodriguez, how you said he's like the weakest character. I do like how it's portrayed because while he is like his faith is kind of the weakest, he never truly like changes his viewpoint. Like he's still just as strong, but it takes him not changing it. What I mean by that is he starts off saying your life is worth more than the religion. You can still believe it, like trample. And then he has a hard time like dealing with that, like just being I'm gonna denounce the religion. But when he finally gets to the point where he's like if I can tell people to trample, I'm gonna trample. Like he gets to the point where, like we said at the end, where he's just silent, he's not saying anything, he's just trampling all over. It doesn't matter what he says, it just
It gets
matters what he feels.
it's at that point that he truly understands that like he is the vessel for his faith, and it's not the physical actions in the real world. It's what's within. It's like the faith within. And that's when it flips and he does become silent, and
Well,
his
that's also
prayer becomes silent because he knows that it's about faith is about the relationship you have with God within, and that you never
right.
truly and God, which I think is so powerful to me. That's so fucking powerful. And like I'm not a religious person, but I believe in like the human spirit to a lot of degree. And sometimes like human psychology is so attached to like some of the things we do instead of the way that we feel about the things that we do, and we're so hard on ourselves, like we like as a human, as humans in the West. And it's so complicated by like the pettiness of how easy life truly is now. And it's such an important message for secularists and religious folk to pay attention to like how you treat yourself within, how you treat yourself internally is as if not more important than the way that that manifests in your actions, because like you only have you only have your mind. And like you learn this in a lot of, and Buddhists appreciate this tremendously in the faith of Buddhism, because like obviously meditation is their prayer practice, right? And like
Mhm.
meditation focused on this, Buddhist monks will focus on this immensely about like, well, obviously like one of the doctrines of Buddhism is like suffering is like essential, right? um
Right.
but like that conversation within yourself. And like meditation is all about that, about being about like paying close mindful attention to like what to each thought and how it manifests itself on its own, and like the human mind and consciousness. Like this is all like intertwined. And I just love that this was intersected with the Christian faith in this way, because like I think it's actually a very unifying film in this way. It takes two religions and it cross sects them in a way that's like very unique. And I think only a Japanese Christian could do that. And I think that's what happened with the novel, in my opinion.
Right, yeah, it takes an intimate knowledge of both Christianity and like Buddhism and like the idiosyncrasies of both, um, to kind of make such a like a touching, like a deep piece.
A beautiful stew. It's like a beautiful stew of religion, of spirituality, of two religions are
Oh,
that so much martyrdom and violence has been like a result of them, but like are about peace. And
but like, and yeah, like that's what, like I said it at the beginning, like I feel terrible. Like it's not exactly how I feel, but like the Japanese people almost like aren't wrong. like what they were trying to prevent was like any kind of colonialism and like
Right.
the way you spread. I mean, I don't know if you play any kind of Civ, like Civilization or anything.
Oh,
It's,
sure. Oh, yeah.
it's
Back in the day, for sure.
way you spread your whole everything is an easy way to like spread your ideas is through religion. Like once
Of
a
course.
religion takes root
The
where you are,
fastest,
like
it's because it's the fastest path to the human spirit, to the human soul.
right. And
And
if
the
you,
human soul is like, this is what literature is about because it's
it's how
literature. That's
you
what literature does. It's the
it's
same
how
thing.
you it's how you ignite it's one of the easiest ways to ignite passion in people.
Mhm.
And
Get
like
them feeling.
I'm not saying that like Christianity was a like a poison in Japan at that time, but I will say, and it's what they will say is that's definitely not what they were looking for at that time.
No,
They
no,
were
that's why it
trying
didn't
to,
take. It's why it didn't
yeah,
grow there because it was predominantly a Buddhist country, just like the Chinese. But the difference is that there were like my like as I said at the beginning of the podcast is that like what do you then do with the Japanese Christians who actually did renounce Buddhism and believed in Jesus? Like what do
right.
you do?
What do you kill them and then they go to heaven?
Because it was outlawed, they were hidden. They had to be hidden, and like they had to either fake apostasy or they had to truly apostatize and or be killed. And like it's just it's complicated because I like imperialism was a real thing at the time, and Japanese know a lot about imperialism because they conducted their own imperialist ways in only a couple hundred years later, and it had been actually inflicted upon them in this time as well. So like it's just complicated, like everything is. Like it's impossible for us to sit here and unpack, religious imperialism, religious colonialism, um, which basically is, I would say, colonialism and imperialism both were almost always inflicted upon the backs of religious faith in one doctrine or another.
Good way to get a foot in the door.
That's right. Yeah, like you just said, it's the fastest. It's the way to the human spirit. It's the way to invigorate passion in people. But either way, I think it's a Christian film, but it's so honest, and you really just, I don't know. For me, I just love Martin Scorsese, and I just respect what he did with this film so much. I just think it was such a difficult project for him. I did have a few issues with the film too. It's hard to bring them up now because I've just been praising it so much, and now that I know more about the film too, after doing our research and listening to Martin Scorsese talk about, what the film meant to him and what he was, um, aiming at and what he was going for and what he interpreted the novel to be going for. It's hard for me to like hearken too much on it. I did have a couple of little issues with some of the Japanese acting. Like I don't know if you would agree with me, but I just felt like some of the Japanese acting was a little bit substandard. Inoue Samoa was the actor who played him. I'm sorry, I don't have the actor's name, and I don't mean to besmirch the actor. I'm sure or besmirch the actor. I'm sure he's a good actor. It was a tough performance. I did not.
I thought he
Issei
was
Ogata.
I thought he was a perfect caricature of a cartoon-esque villain.
Dude, you hit the nail on the head, and that's what I didn't like about it.
That's why I loved
You said
him.
exactly what I said.
He was a cartoon villain
It
level.
was. Yeah,
Like
it
he
was. It
was
was
just a
totally the anime villain.
Japanese,
He was like an
what
anime
can
villain.
I do for you?
I didn't like that about it though.
I loved it, and it was just the
I knew
arrogance of it. Like he
I had a
carried,
feeling you would. That's why I didn't even bring it up till the end because I was like, this dude probably fucking loved that shit, and I just didn't.
dude. I love that. I love the Inquisitor. That's the thing that I hated the most about the movie. So I didn't hate the bad guys. Like they are
You
like
like
they're reasonable, and that's why I think like even the Padres, they're like, yeah, we're in a bad spot, and yeah, we fucked up. Like they're sitting there like groveling like kids, and they're like, no, like you're not in trouble, but like you just need to like grow up and like you need to apostatize. You just need to do that. We need you to do that, or else we're gonna kill people.
I
And they're
love
like, I don't wanna.
I love the so I had a couple of issues with a few of the shogunate, and then I liked Mokichichi and or I'm sorry, Mokichi, and I thought the performance from Kichijiro was perfect. He did exactly what he was supposed to do, which was like kind of make your skin crawl, but like in a weird way. The interpreter was good, but like no, actually, I take that back. I didn't even kind of like I didn't love the interpreter either. I didn't think that was a good performance. I
Like
just
you said,
didn't.
dude, he's my favorite character,
I
man.
know,
He
but I
was
didn't like him. I didn't think he was a good actor. I thought that he was like kind of smug, and I know he should have been,
right.
but
That's why
I
he
didn't
was
see
smug. He knew the
vibe.
whole religion.
I know. Now you're making me shit
He
up.
was
I don't
he
want to
was
sound.
trying to help him.
I
You
know.
know who I liked? I like the
I didn't like
I
the.
like hmm
I didn't like that performance. It could have been better. I just thought.
I liked the I liked the one guy who was like the speakerhead for uh for what is it? Inoue or what it is or whatever he is. The dude who talked to the people in the beginning where he was like, hey, like you guys got to do this, we'll give you 3 days, because he had the samurai swords, but he also just
Oh,
had
that
like
dude.
a
Yeah, no, that dude
yeah,
was fine. That dude was fine.
he also just
He was
had like a raid.
he
Like
was
it was
also
just
a
like a
caricature in some ways, but like I bought him. I bought
I
him.
like I like how he just had like he had a samurai sword s thing is like a boken, but it was just like a reed. Like you just
Yeah.
smack people with the least.
Yeah. Well, there was one scene where like Inoue was like I know that there was probably a meaning for this. Like he was talking to Rodriguez after he had already apostatized, and like he began to get up, and like usually he's like he was so old that like he couldn't get up on his own, and then this one time his like men around him tried to help him
He's like,
get
"Oh
up.
yeah, we'll
He
help you," and he swats
smacks
him
him,
away.
swats him in the head with the fan thing,
Hmm.
and I was just like, come on, I don't like that choice. No, I know that there's probably a mature and reason. Like everything Scorsese does is there's a reason for it.
Well,
But
no, it's just because the whole time like he's being seen like as helpless, and every single time he's like, like help me out, like
I
do it,
just
and then
I didn't like
the
it.
one time it doesn't go like like he
It's
goes,
such a
he's like,
serious
bitch.
film, and it took me out. It's such a serious film. I just wanted it to stay. I didn't want to have like an ounce of doubt in like in the acting, and I just it those couple moments it took me.
It's a Japanese trope.
I know it is. I know, and
The
because I
bonk on
didn't
the
want any
head.
tropes in this film. I just wanted
But
it to follow
that's
through.
they're in Japan.
No, yeah, but that's it's a Japanese trope though. And by the way, like part of some of the time, the characters felt like I felt like it was 2016 people playing people from the 16th century. That's
Nah, see, you got me. That's where you lost me because I think the only person who rivals Scorsese in the time period shit is Robert Eggers. I can't
Eagers
think
is
of,
right there. Yeah, no,
yeah, I can't think of anyone else who is.
that's what I'm saying, guys. Is like the standard. That's that. I don't lose you. I think I'm keeping you here because like I actually think Eakers is like he's better than Scorsese in this way because like
I hate it. Yeah, he is.
he is like no, he really is. And like listen, I've seen Gangs of New York and I had the same fucking problem with Gangs of New York where I was just like, what is it about this that I'm just
I
hey,
had that problem in Gangs in New York more so than I had that in this.
Gangs of New York. Well, the only person in that film that I buy that I'm like wholesale cloth is fucking Bill the Butcher, like Daniel Day Lewis. I'm just like that motherfucker. Like I'm
Well,
not
that's
sure that
not
they didn't use a
fair.
time machine and bring that sick bastard back from the fucking like
That's not fair at all. You can put Daniel Day-Lewis in anything, and he's going to be the most believable actor.
even Leo in that film was like not particularly good. So I'm just trying to be listen, I can't just sit here and praise the film front to back. I had a couple of issues with it. I talked about them. Luckily, the film is so fucking good that it doesn't matter about like a couple of as I referred to this earlier when speaking about the film with my wife. I was like, I love that film so much. It's so powerful. And my issues with the film are minimal and they are you can classify my issues with the film as they're either you can classify them as either casting issues slash I call them Hollywood slash film issues. Like these are minor issues. The film is so much deeper and more important than those like problems I have with it that like it doesn't take me out of the film enough to like dislike the
Yeah,
film.
they didn't cast like the main characters poorly.
No, yeah, and Garfield's great. Garfield's fantastic, and I think his acting is it's like a 90% there. Like there's only a few moments where I thought that he kind of slipped a little bit, and I didn't like the hair. Like that really bothered me. I was like, why is his fucking hair so like it looks like it's freshly brushed?
It's because so his hair was perfect, and it's not. I'm not saying like, oh, this is. I read this somewhere. This is exactly. But to me, it's because almost that's like how the Japanese depicted like a priest, like always
Yeah.
perfect, no matter what. Like in
Right.
the image of they
Right.
were
I think it was
godly.
intentional. And if it's intentional, I just want to hear the reason why.
Well,
I'll be
in
good.
the
We good with
in the in the one scene when those guys from Goto like walk all the way there, uh when they find them outside, they're like, we're just gonna go outside, doesn't matter, like we need to. And then they see the Hulk and they're like, oh, it's a sign from God. They're just so they're indispose, like totally, like they're on the lamb for the lack of a better term.
the Lamb of God.
Yeah, they're on the lamb of God. But
Right.
and then you see them in that moment and they're just lounging, just like not worried about anything, just looking up at the sky, like borderline smiling, cheesing, like they're in the worst spot. And then these guys see it, like, is that a priest? Oh yeah, probably. They're just
That was
chilling.
scary. That was like your heart drops a little bit in that scene. It's like, oh shit.
Right. When he's like, oh,
No.
we're being watched. But like to those guys, they just see them, they're like, that's Jesus sin down there.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah, that, because
Yeah.
at first you think they've been discovered and they're going to be like, they're going to be captured, but then you
Right.
realize
But no, in their mind, they
they
just see
think
like
it's
two
Christ.
figures. Yeah,
Well, yeah,
it's as close as you can get. They're like borderline is. And if you listen to Liam Neeson's character, uh, he says that they legitimate, like
he's
that's what they
deified.
think, you're being idolized. Like they don't care about God. They just care about like worldly stuff.
Well, let's push ahead. I mean, we could go for a very long time on the film. It's such an amazing film. But let's talk awards a little bit. It was critically received very, very well. I mean, and rightly so. It belongs in that conversation. It was on the top 10 list for a lot of films in, like I said, what was largely basically a good year of film. Not a great year, but a very, very good year. With a lot of good, very good movies. I think this thing stands alone. I personally, I got to be honest, I think it's the best film of the year. I thought it was the best film of that year. It was my favorite film of the year, and I saw a lot of these 2016 films. It only got one Academy Award nomination for cinematography. I mean, I will admit, yes, the cinematography is gorgeous, but that is atrocious. I'm sorry, that's just atrocious. That's the Academy. Just like, I don't think religious films can do well with the Academy anymore. I think it's hard for them unless you're doing like Spotlight the year before, where it's hard because Spotlight came out the year before. Did you see Spotlight?
Mm-mm.
So Spotlight was a film um, the Catholic Church in their like the controversy across, like it was in Boston. It was the Boston Globe breaking the story about child abuse cases within the
Oh,
Catholic.
that's because it was a negative.
Right. So that came out the year
So
before. One
that's
best
why that's going to be
Right. So
critically
that won Best
received.
Picture 1 year prior, and it would have been very weird to like nominate this film in a substantial way, a very like pro-Christian film a year later
I
after.
wouldn't even say. I mean, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't
That's what I
say
mean.
it's like
The
pro
Academy is
Christian.
they're so fickle, man. I'm sorry. I hate the Academy Awards. I'm so done with that award program. Like where they've gone, like
So like that's the thing. Like you said it. Like you're not religious. Like I'm not religious either, dude. I think that it's got a great message.
it's a beautiful film
It's
about
a good it's a good message if you're not religious. I think it's a great message if you are.
here's the thing. It's actually a bit critical of Catholicism and Christianity. And
It is the whole time.
all about
The
the
priests themselves.
misinterpretations. It's about the self misinterpretations of faith. It's about like people thinking that they have to live by the doctrine of the Bible and the word of God, but like the spirituality and the faith within and your doubt that you're living up to his word is within, and that you can
So
maintain your faith while also not living up to the word of his of
like
a religious script.
like you said, Rodriguez is the weakest character because he believed he was in some way Jesus. He thought he needed to suffer as Jesus suffered to prove that he was religious. But the thing is, if you actually listen to the word of God, he doesn't want you. He says, "Yeah, live as I do," but the main thing is he wants you to live.
Right, yeah. Well,
He suffered, so you don't need to.
you don't have right.
He already did the suffering.
Well, we should. I feel like it's almost a little late to explain this, but like we didn't even actually verbalize this in the podcast, and I want to now. Is that like the reason that we know that Errol and I have discussed at length here, that the faith of Rodriguez, which by the way, this is if you've seen the film, you actually know what we were talking about, anyways, because you've seen the conclusion. But the way that the film ends is a Buddhist traditional ceremony for Father Rodriguez after his apostasy, and they force him to apostatize over time and time again throughout the course of the rest of his life to ensure that he has truly renounced his faith. And he does, and then lives out the rest of his days basically in silence, not speaking, and taking a Japanese name, taking a Japanese wife, having Japanese children, and basically just living the life of someone who would have renounced their faith. And only at the end of the film do you see his wife slip into his coffin, into his hand, a small makeshift crucifix, indicating
It's the one that that one guy gave him.
Kichijiro, right?
No, the
Mokachi,
yeah,
yeah,
the one that he carved for the Gisma.
indicating to the audience that like while his actions may have seemingly renounced his own faith, he always believed within, and his realization being that his body and his spirit is the vessel for his faith and not his actions in the real world, and that he is not Christ, he cannot act as Christ, and to emulate Christ in the real world is not to act as a priest. That is not how a priest is expected to act in the eyes of God. It's about maintaining your faith within, and in sending that message to Christian followers to alleviate their doubt within. Well, that's what spirituality and that's what Christian faith is all about. And I just think that message, I don't even care how religious that message is. That message is like, to have faith in something bigger than yourself is, I actually think, a great psychological practice, regardless of whether or not it's entrenched in like religiosity. It's just a good thing to zoom out on your own life and understand your role in the world, and to actually have, even say you replace Christianity with just being good to other people and being good in the world. Like, if what you believe is good, and your actions are good, and like treating, maybe kindness, let's switch it out with kindness. Like, you could be tempted to not be kind to people who are terrible to you or treat you poorly, or society treats you poorly, or the government treats you poorly, but your doctrine is kindness. I'm going to be kind anyway. I'm going to be loving and kind regardless. Like, having that conviction within is truly sometimes the most important thing to maintaining it and not becoming jaded and not becoming like doubtful of its validation, or its validity within you. And like, I just think that message doesn't belong in a society right now. And especially in 2016, it seemed to be the same case, because critics love this film and the awards refused to acknowledge it. It was not marketed well. It did not do well in the box office. Like I said, it lost money. I just think that's a travesty, because I think it's just a great film. I think it's a truly great film. I think it's probably, I won't say it's the best film of the 2010s, just because films like Dunkirk exist, and there's some other ones, but it's in the conversation. Would you agree, Errol?
Oh yeah, I think it's the most important religious movie I've ever seen.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I think it's in that mix. And I mean, the Passion of the Christ is another one that's like, it's
If you ask me,
not my favorite, but it's important.
the Passion of the Christ is almost pornography.
Yeah, well, I don't
If
know.
you ask me, it's almost just like,
It's tough. It's
yeah,
just,
you know the story of Jesus, but now here it is in HD.
fuck it.
Feel the blood, hear the sounds.
You don't even have to be religious. Like, you don't have to even believe a word of that stuff. Man, it's fucking tough watch. It's very difficult to read.
Yeah, but that's watching someone getting tortured for 2 hours. That's easy to be a tough one. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think it doesn't like strike at the religious chords. It's just like, oh man, this dude really did suffer. That's rough.
Well, this is the last thing I'll say. Well, I won't call Silence the best film of the 2010s, I think the only reason I'm going to say that is because there is another film that came out in the 2010s that's of the Passion of the Christ vein in this way, but I think is we'll talk about it when we do Wolf of Wall Street, because it came out the same year. We'll also talk about it at some point when we do our list of. At some point, Errol and I will do a list of the best films of the 21st century. We've talked about doing that. And to me, this is somewhere in the top echelon, in the top three, top four, top five. And to me, the best film of the 2010s is 12 Years a Slave. That's a, that's a, that's a, I mean, you want to talk about films that are difficult to watch. I mean, it's of course that, but fucking A is. I know that people had issues with it because it was made by a black British filmmaker, and there were British actors in it. The lead actor is British. He's not African American. I know
He
that.
wasn't a slave.
Yeah, right. Exactly. You nailed it. I mean, it's God forbid. I know that it's very, not okay for people
They had to track
to
someone down from
act, to
Alabama. It was like literally that dude's like great grandson. Here he is in the flesh.
and the woman, the actress who won best pick or best supporting actress in the film, Lupita Amandi Nyong'o, is she's fucking Mexican and Kenyan. Like but she won the Oscar, and like nobody's given her any grief because I think she's American. I think she's like been American. I mean, she's from Mexico, and she's Kenyan. She's not her nationality, or her like actual nationality is Mexican, only because she's like that's where she was born. But like she's Kenyan. Her parents are Kenyan. But like that also doesn't mean that she's not African American. But nobody gave her any grief about it, and they shouldn't have, because like it's a film, and the film has a very very important message. I think it's one of the best films ever made. That film is so true and honest and graphic and vicious, and it should be. And we'll talk about that one day too. I mean, good lord, but um, in terms of films, Silence is in there. That's in the mix. It's a great film. Errol, what do they say? Let's take a break. We've given our thoughts on the film. Actually, no, we won't even take a break. Let's dive right into it. Let's give our rating.
Wrap it up.
Yeah, let's wrap it right up. We've done a good job of saying.
Karobu.
Yeah,
You're gonna give up.
let's do it. Yeah, yeah, I renounce.
I renounce the
I renounce
podcast.
the podcast. There's just a picture of like my face and your face next to each other. I'm
Yeah, step on it.
on my face.
Oh, one thing. Speaking of stepping on it, before we Karobu this whole thing, I love the scene where they get everyone like the Jisama, and they have everyone step on the thing, whatever it's called, the
Something E. I can't remember now.
uh whatever the picture of Jesus.
Yes, the
They're
picture.
like they're like walking in mud, like just like slop, and then everyone who steps on it, yeah, they all step on the fumi, and like they're walking in like slop, like it's really dirty,
Right.
and like that thing, it's clean.
Yeah, every time they step on it. Yeah, it's true.
The three people that step on it in the mud, it's just
Never leave a
clean.
trace of mud behind.
Right. I was like, dude, that's like an act of God in itself. Like, if I
I
didn't believe,
know
like, literally, they walk in, like, step on
how
it.
he managed to film that. I don't know how, but
They had to wipe it, dude. They had to, and they'd be like, look, it's clean.
maybe they filmed it in reverse.
No, I'm pretty sure they just cleaned it. But
Um,
yeah, they all slopped through and stepped on it. It's just nothing.
incredible, incredible filmmaking, and that is a nice little touch in those scenes. Which
But would you die for that?
wait, hold on. Before we go anywhere, I did want to talk about when Father Rodriguez apostatized, right? That
Mm-hmm.
scene, man, I can't believe we're skipping over that. I don't want to skip over that scene. That scene is so fucking powerful because of the very obvious trope of like the voice of Jesus telling him to apostatize and telling him to step on the stone, and the very obvious silence of the scene where all the noise.
Right, where it's just like there's not even like the crickets. But that's the thing too. Like, he's asking to hear God, and he hears God like twice in the whole movie. Like, he hears him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. He hears the voice of Jesus, like, and that's a moment where it is. I remember seeing that the first time I heard the voice, it like sent like a shiver down my spine. I don't know who did the voice of Jesus.
Sounded like Liam Neeson.
I actually think it was just I thought I read it, but I want to make sure before I say. Oh yeah, it was. It was the guy at the beginning who plays Alessandro Balagnano. Um,
Oh, okay.
yeah, it was the guy the Jesuit at the beginning who sends them on.
Right.
He actually did the voice, but man, when he speaks, like, and you know it's Jesus speaking to him because of like how just like intense the moment is. It's just amazing. It's such an amazing scene when he does apostatize because it is actually the moment when he hears his voice. It's so hard for him to truly apostatize in that
But
moment.
that and
But
that's
then he's not.
like I was saying, he told everyone to do that the whole time, but then when it came for him to do it, he's like, I don't know what to do. But then it was like, just do it. And then he still felt bad. But then that's when he, like you said, in ignoring the religion, that's where he becomes the most religious. He gets to answer the call, the reason why he was there.
Incredible. All right, let's move into the ratings. Let's talk about the rating of the film. Out of 10, we're doing it, Errol. Fuck, man. I haven't even really thought about it. So this is going to be off the cuff for me. Errol, kick us off. What's your rating out of 10 for the film?
Yeah, no, I thought about it. I give it a 9.
That's a 9 out of 10 for you, my friend. I think that's perfect. I mean, that's a perfect rating. I'm going to jot you down here because we're keeping track of this stuff. By the way, like I said, folks, um, we're going to have our ratings listed on our website. So please check in with us after each episode when we do a film or we do a an album. We're going to have like a list of our ratings that we can get an idea of what we think about stuff, even outside of listening. Um, I did have some issues with the film, like I mentioned, but God, I do love the film, and I think it's powerful in a way that, like, man, if I really wanted to suggest a film to for someone to try to go to deeply go into a film, like if somebody was telling me, I'm really looking to, like, I want to watch something that's just gonna like make me think and make me consider things I haven't considered before. This would be such a great starting place. I can't give it a perfect score. I thought about my rating system about like there's really no such thing as a perfect film, and a perfect film doesn't have to get it. It doesn't have to truly be perfect to get a 10 out of 10. And I know Errol and I have been giving some high scores throughout the course of this podcast, but that's honestly just more of a result from us just selecting great films. We're just those are the films we want to talk about. Usually, great
Yeah,
films.
a 10 for me is not like a 10 for everyone. A 10 for me is definitely a 10 for me.
Yeah, yeah, me too. And like, well, I think The Lighthouse was our first 10 out of 10 for films. I think, right? Is that true? Um, I'll go to the website and we'll find out. Yeah, we both gave The Lighthouse a 10 out of 10. For me, I'm gonna go with Errol on this. I think I'm with you. I think I'm also gonna give it a 9 out of 10. It's a 9 out of 10 only because I think that it does. I told my wife this, and I think this is just the truth about the film. By the way, great trailer, fucking amazing trailer. Really, really good trailer. I remember when it came out, when it was released. I was like, I could not wait for the film, and I think because there's something. So I grew up somewhat Christian. I grew up going to church. I've been confirmed, like all the stuff. And I actually am of Portuguese descent. My grandparents were one of my grandfather was Portuguese. He was like almost full blooded Portuguese, and his parents were both Portuguese. The film and like and I'm also Italian, so like Scorsese's like Italian background, and it's like there's just a personalized aspect of the film that really speaks to me. I think that I was really hoping that this was going to be like my all time favorite film. I think I had that expectation going into it, and it didn't quite live up to that in the ways that I thought it would. It gave me a different experience, and it gave me different things to talk about and think about. Um, but I did have a few issues with the film that I've discussed here. I still think it's a great film. I still think it's probably one of the best films of the last 15 years, for sure. So for that, I'll give it a 9 out of 10. And after a few more viewings, who knows? Maybe I'll raise my rating. But at this point, I think a 9 out of 10 is a fair rating. So, Errol, we're aligned on that.
Oh yeah. No, my grandma's like really religious and I I don't think I would like show like The Lighthouse or like be like, hey, you guys should watch this. It's like my favorite movie. But like this is a movie I'd be like, yo, Graham,
Yeah, I want to
peep
share this
this.
with people. Don't you? Like I feel
Right.
that way too. I just like I really feel like I want to share this with people. Like I want to share this film with people in a way
I
that
think
like
it's
it's different.
I think it's important. I don't think it's like the most important like thing ever, but I think if you like any if you have any affinity for any kind of religion, like whether you are like a devout Christian or if you just like theology, then this is a great movie.
Yeah. Yeah, it's for you. And it's weighty. It's a very
I
weighty.
would, dude, even if you're like a stark atheist, it'll
Oh, there's so
tickle
much
something for you too,
if
because
you're
you're gonna
just
be
a
like, yeah, you're be like they're the Japanese are right.
yeah, if you're just yeah, that's what I mean is like you can be secularist. There's so much to love about the film. It's there's and whatever. It can be lauded for to the cows come home. It's a great film. That's the end of the story. It's a great film. It's a mature film, and it handles the content of the novel in great care. I hope to read the novel one day. It's beautiful too. Like visually, I think the film is actually better visually than dialectically. Like like the writing of the film isn't as
Um,
good as it looks, which is crazy.
when I say like the place like almost looks like purgatory, like in that there's also like they show like purgatory and then they show heaven and then they like show hell. Like in when they're like at a I'm pretty sure they're like at the Vatican in the beginning like they are.
Well, no, they're in Portugal.
Oh yeah, sorry, when they're in Portugal like they are like on a mountain. It's almost like a Mount Olympus-esque. Like there's like the clouds are there, like it's beautiful. And then like the first time they showed Japan, it's just the hot springs. Like it's you could definitely see like the dichotomies between the two where like
Actually, I take that back. It says here that they're actually at St. Paul's College in actually southern China. So their journey is not as far as we thought. It's in the South China Sea that they start. Um,
oh
there's just a missionary there or a college, a Christian college in Macau. It's in
yeah,
Macau.
oh yeah. And then so when they're traveling there, like they're like in the sea that kind of looks like they have the clouds there that looks like you know, heaven-esque. But when they're traveling between islands, when he's initially heading to Goto, looks like the river Styx. It's just
Mm,
gray, and
yeah,
then like the ferrymen, they're not saying anything. And then once they get to the island, the souls of the damned just like jump on the side of the ship.
yeah, that's
They just
perfect. It is too. Yeah.
it's like they're it's like I'm telling you, it's like it's almost like they already died, like, or at least if they didn't die, like religion has already died. Like they are like
Or
it's
it's like it's a representation of the last gasps of it. Like,
right. Like they are. It's as close to hell on earth as a Christian can get.
all right, well, listen, that's silence. Thank you, folks, for listening. We do have a new episode coming. This will be released in a couple of days. By the time you guys hear it, this will be released on Monday, September 18th. So that being said, our next episode, we're going to try to pump that out within the next week, maybe a little longer. We'll see how things go. But in the next, probably within the next 7 to 10 days or so, our next episode, it's going to be our fourth installment of the biography series. And that's going to be we're going to stay in the Far East. We're going to stay out there in Japan, specifically Japanese author and literature figure Yukio Mishima. We're going to talk about his backstory, his political influence, his cultural influence, his literature influence. There's a lot going on with that story. The story of his life. We're going to unpack that thing and stay within the confines of Japan. It's Japan heavy in the return for the Peripheral Views podcast. So, Errol, I'm just going to hit a few housekeeping points on the way out so folks know where to find us. All our content, we're going to try to be a little more active on Twitter/X. So if you're looking to keep up with us on there, Peripheral V123, that's where to check us out there. Our YouTube channel, just throw us in the search bar, Peripheral Views Podcast. Our content will be posted on there henceforth each episode. So if you are in the YouTube space, that's a good place to find our audio. Um, we've done at this point. This is our 12th episode of the Peripheral Views podcast. We intend to keep going in each of these series. We've got a big project that we're working on right now. We're going to announce that after the next episode on what we're working on there. The website is up and running. Check us out, Peripheral Views podcast /home. Check that out. That's our website. It's got all our content there. It's got contact information. That thing's going to continuously get worked on and updated along the way with new content, new announcements, this and that. Please feel free to check us out on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. And if you do, please subscribe, hit us with a rating, hit us with a review. Helps us tremendously, keeps us on point, keeps us moving ahead. And we appreciate any listenership that we've acquired so far. We hope you guys stick with us. We're going to keep pushing through. We love talking film. We love talking music. We love talking books. We love talking things like films like this give us, which is an opportunity to discuss deeper topics and deeper discussions such as faith and religion and spirituality. This stuff is interesting to us as well, and we won't hold back. We're gonna keep down that path. We've got a lot of interesting stuff to unpack as the podcast unfolds. So those are the places to hit us. Errol, you got any closing notes you'd like to add before we close this thing out?
No, I'm that's about everything I had. It's a good movie, great cast. I give it 2 thumbs up.
Yeah, give it a viewing, and if you like the what you see from the film, I love to do this with films. I like to watch the film and then listen to a podcast about it. So maybe that's the method. If you see that if you're following us and you see we've done a podcast on a film, go watch the film and then give us a listen after the fact and see if you agree with what we have to say. Maybe we offer a little bit of insight on something you weren't considering while watching the film. So check it out. Silence by Martin Scorsese, an absolute classic. Thank you so much, folks, for listening to Peripheral Views podcast. We'll be back in a matter of a week or so with Yukio Mishima. Should be out probably in the next week. We appreciate all the support, and we will see you next time on the Peripheral Views podcast. Thanks again, and we'll talk to you soon.
Keep on trampling.
That's just terrible. Trample.